A red-haired woman rests peacefully in a sun-drenched forest. The goddess of fire, Siren Arsis Harneshan, is interrupted by a voice calling her name, while another woman named Arwen approaches. Arwen, the goddess of prophecy, announces she's finally found Siren and asks what is happening. Tak! Arwen urgently grabs Siren's hand, insisting they have no time for this. Arwen excitedly tells a confused Siren that she has found a way to get her into the celestial realm. Arwen reveals that gods who love gambling are focused on the Koronin Empire, where a great commotion is unfolding. The gods are betting points on which of the three princes of the Koronin Empire will become the next successor. Siren is aghast at the idea of the gods betting with points. Siren pushes Arwen away, adamantly declaring she is not interested in such a game. Siren is suddenly transported to a grand hall and wonders how she got there, while Arwen advises her to leave before she loses her points to the professionals already gambling. Arwen smiles benevolently, surrounded by a radiant aura of flowers. Arwen whispers a secret from the goddess of fate to Siren. She must choose Targa, the emperor's youngest son. Siren rejects the scheme, determined to earn her points honestly, and announces she is leaving. Arwen desperately clings to Siren, begging her to stay for just one drink as a friend, but Siren questions her persistence. Siren reluctantly agrees to a single glass, and Arwen cheerfully presents a golden goblet. Accepting the goblet, Siren feels suspicious, wondering why the drink seemed to be waiting just for her. As she drinks, a dizzying sensation overwhelms her. Siren slumps forward, and Arwen catches her calling her name. Holding the drugged Siren, Arwen urges her to use her points on the glowing purple orb before them. Arwen claims that betting is much easier than gathering points in the difficult human world. With a sly smile, Arwen tells Siren that her struggles are now over. Arwen excitedly pushes the dazed Siren's hand toward the orb, asking if she isn't thrilled. The world distorts violently through the lens of the magical orb. As Siren is forced toward a swirling vortex of energy, both women look on in shock. Arwen declares this one move will grant Siren all the points she needs to finally ascend to the celestial realm. Having lost all her points, the goddess awakens as a swaddled, blonde-haired baby. The story explains that gods engage in games with the human world, gathering points to enter the celestial realm, as a hooded figure holds a baby with light blue hair. As two robed men argue, the narration explains the system of collecting points for entry into the celestial realm. Siren, now an enraged baby, internally fumes that she lost all her points because Arwen tricked her with liquor, while a separate image shows Arwen giggling and teasing her about getting drunk. A man with gray hair stares intently as the blonde-haired baby in his arms begins to glow. The man is revealed to be Emperor Arnoa II of the Koronin Empire, who seems to recognize the infant. Emperor Arnoa studies the baby's face with a serious expression. The Emperor asks a hooded figure if they found the child, and the figure confirms they found her with a woman fleeing during a great battle. The hooded figure explains that the woman instructed them to present an item if anyone asked about the baby. A simple gold ring is revealed, and the Emperor is stunned, recognizing it as Targa's ring. The Emperor asks a nervous Count Montez if the child resembles Targa, and the Count hesitantly agrees. The Emperor muses that the baby does indeed look very much like Lord Targa. The Emperor angrily shushes the crying infant, causing the reincarnated Siren to silently rage at his harshness. Standing over the hooded figure, the Emperor wonders how Targa, who had no romantic entanglements, could have fathered a child. The Emperor questions the hooded figure about the baby's age and the location of her mother. The hooded figure solemnly reports that the child is 9 months old and her mother died shortly after giving birth. The Emperor and Count Montez react to the tragic news with grim expressions. Count Montez explains that they cannot confirm the child's royal blood until her first birthday, when she can use the power of water. The Emperor decisively orders the hooded figure to place the child on the ground and step away. As the hooded figure complies, the baby watches in alarm as the Emperor summons a swirling torrent of magical water, wondering what he plans to do. The Emperor declares with grim determination that there is, in fact, a way to check the baby's lineage right now. The magical water surges toward the wide-eyed, helpless baby. The powerful wave of water swirls with intense magical energy. The water parts around the baby, who now looks up with an innocent, glowing aura. Count Montez urges His Majesty to look at the baby, but the Emperor declares that what he sees is already proof enough. With a sharp point of his finger, Emperor Arnoa declares the test proves she really is Targa's child. Wah! The baby, Siren, lets out a cheerful cry, much to everyone's surprise. Emperor Arnoa and Count Montez stare in stunned silence, wondering how this could be. The Emperor scolds the baby for being ill-mannered, while a vision of Siren's past self looks on as Arwen dismissively says, "Fine, fine." The Emperor orders Count Montez to take the child to Leighton Palace and await Targa's return from the battlefield for confirmation. A horse-drawn carriage travels through a dark, starry forest at night. Inside the rocking carriage, a maid watches over the swaddled baby, who is now in her care. Siren internally rages that she lost all her points in a single bet and now has only one path left to regain them. The narration explains that to win her points back, Siren must support Targa, the Emperor's illegitimate child, as she has now been reborn as his own. Baby Siren looks on with fierce, determined eyes, ready for the challenge ahead. The scene darkens, as a cruel voice from her memory asks if she still doesn't understand her new reality. In a flashback, a smirking Arwen taunts a fallen Siren, mocking her for once, thinking she was the best in the world. Betrayed and furious, Siren's past self screams at Arwen, demanding to know how she could do this. Arwen coldly reveals she had to act like Siren's clueless friend for the past 900 years. Siren's eye widens in horror as she realizes the friendship she cherished was a complete lie. Ha ha ha, Arwen laughs, manically reveling in Siren's utter devastation. Standing over her, Arwen boasts about her incredible acting and how Siren completely fell for it. Arwen gently caresses Siren's face, whispering that she could never, ever stand her. She gloats about how long she's wanted to see Siren's face twisted in despair, as Siren seethes with silent fury. Arwen dismissively tells the defeated Siren she can just gather her points all over again. She then laughs mockingly, adding that it will only take a few hundred more years of playing those human games she likes so much. The memory fades as baby Siren shivers with lingering anger and hurt. The rattling of the carriage wheel startles her, and she wonders if she dozed off. The hooded figure holding her is met by a guard who announces their arrival at the palace, shocking Siren. Siren reflects on becoming a princess, hoping for a grand palace like in her past life, only to see the dilapidated state of her new home. A woman introduces herself as the maid to the hooded figure, but Siren internally panics, realizing the place is no better than an abandoned house. The hooded figure asks about the child's fate, but the maid simply reminds them that this is the imperial palace where the Majesty resides. TSK. The maid turns away with a look of disdain. The maid mutters what a hassle this is, prompting the enraged baby Siren to curse the arrogant woman. Siren despairs, realizing this game is the hardest level as she struggles just to survive, let alone achieve her mission. She silently screams in frustration, trapped and helpless inside her tiny, weak body. A hand gracefully sweeps away dust as a mysterious voice comments on what a mess the situation is. A handsome man with dark hair watches from the shadows with a knowing smirk. He reveals himself as Belzer Maximilian, the god of war, and taunts Siren for having lost her edge. Belzer leans over the baby, warning her to stay away from Arwen and telling her to leave if she's looking for a fight. He patronizingly suggests she should thank him for saving her from being abandoned after her mother died. In a playful thought bubble, Belzer boasts that his help was essential, while Siren's chibi form thinks her ex is thorough with his aftercare. Siren internally schemes, thinking that if the Almighty finds out about Belzer's interference, he'll be in serious trouble. Spreading large, dark wings, Belzer confidently states that as a god in the celestial realm, the Almighty can't touch him, as he broke no rules. He rationalizes that simply moving a mortal baby who might have died anyway doesn't count as forbidden meddling in human affairs. Leaning in, he asks the silent baby what she thinks of his logic. Siren mentally asks Belzer if he did all this because he still has feelings for her. Haha. Belzer laughs, asking if she wants a mirror to see her current state, as she glares back at him. Announcing he's leaving, Belzer prepares to depart through a window. With a final, confident smile, he tells her to try handling things on her own for once. He vanishes in a flutter of black feathers as Siren waves, thinking he's as incomprehensible as ever. The narration explains the cosmic order. Gods from the middle realm descend to the human world for games to earn points from the Almighty. These points are earned through feats like self-sacrifice, or achieving the impossible, breaking the monotony of their existence. The ultimate goal is to fulfill their roles by influencing humans positively and living faithfully, thus proving their worth as children of the Almighty. The narration explains that gods play games for excitement, gathering points to earn a chance to ascend to the celestial realm. Ha ha ha, baby Siren seethes, remembering how her supposed friend Arwen betrayed her, costing her all her points. Clenching her tiny fist, Siren vows to earn back her points in one go by beating the hardest game and showing Arwen who's boss. The story introduces Targa, the third and illegitimate son of the Emperor, an outcast no one expects to take the throne. Wahaha, baby Siren gleefully imagines a mountain of gold, realizing that making the underdog Targa Emperor will earn her massive points. She steels herself for the most difficult game in existence, determined to make her new father, Targa, the next emperor. As two maids enter a dusty room, one complains about the mess, while Siren feigns sleep in her crib and wonders who they are. TSK. A stern-looking woman with her hair in a bun peers down at the baby, callously remarking that she's sleeping, unaware she's been abandoned. The woman remarks that filthy bloodlines like this are bound to appear as the baby sleeps, and the trials begin. The stern woman turns and summons the other maids, calling out for the ladies to come here. 3 maids approach, and one asks what their superior, Parma, needs from them. Parma informs the maids that the child will be staying until Duke Targa's return and that one of them must care for her. As Parma asks who will take the job, 2 of the maids look away with nervous, unwilling expressions. In a cute, stylized panel, Parma asks a maid named Cassie, who quickly protests that she can't do it. Another maid claims she's too busy, while the feigning sleep Siren inwardly fumes at being treated like a burden. Her eyes snap open as she wonders if she's so ugly that everyone is trying to avoid her. A brown-haired maid with kind, green eyes blushes as she gazes at the baby, lost in thought until she softly asks if there is an issue. Parma snaps at the dazed maid, shouting her name. "Rongren, can't you hear me?" Rongren apologizes to Parma, who TSKS, and mutters that she should have been more selective with her new hires. Seeing the maid's apparent interest, Parma assigns her to care for the baby, leaving the newly appointed caretaker stunned. When Parma asks if she doesn't want to, the maid quickly accepts, thanking her superior. Parma warns the maid, now addressing her as Lowen, not to complain later since she volunteered, and clarifies her workload won't be reduced. Lowen agrees and asks where to find food and clothes, but Parma scoffs, asking if she can't figure it out just by looking at the baby. Parma grabs Lowen's chin, leaning in menacingly, and telling her to just make sure the child doesn't starve. Dismissively, Parma adds that Lowen's background makes her a perfect fit and that she's interested to see how they get along. As the other maids leave, baby Siren sighs with relief, exhausted even though it's only morning. Lowen approaches the crib with a gentle smile and a bouquet of flowers, greeting the little one. She gushes over the baby's beauty, saying she was so surprised she thought she was looking at an angel. Lowen tells the baby that no matter what, she looks just like the Duke, as Siren reaches out a tiny hand. Siren's eyes sparkle with hope. She thinks that, while Lowen seems mistreated, her kind heart means she can be trusted. Lowen asks if the baby would like to see the Duke, shocking Siren, who wonders if her father has already arrived. Panicked, Siren shakes her head, thinking she's not ready for this yet. With a grand flourish, Lowen announces she will show Siren the whole family. Lowen presents a wall adorned with several sparkling family portraits in an old, dusty room. Hey. Lowen giggles, relieved, and explains the room used to be the Emperor's private study, which is why it's full of portraits. She points to a portrait of Emperor Arnoa, reminding Siren that she saw him yesterday. Next, Lowen gestures to a painting of the late Crown Prince, flanked by the 2 Grand Dukes. Siren's eyes widen with anticipation as Lowen begins to introduce the final, most important person. A grand portrait reveals a stunningly handsome man with blonde hair, identified as her father, Targa, leaving Siren to wonder if he's even human, while Loan admits she first mistook him for a temple statue. As a former goddess, Siren internally scoffs, knowing no temple statue has ever been that handsome. Loan giggles as Siren reaches for the portrait, exclaiming that the baby already recognizes her father. Siren gazes at the portrait with a determined look. Knowing she just has to wait a little longer, she renews her vow, declaring that she will make her father the next emperor for sure. Her determination quickly turns to panic as she realizes that at this rate, she's going to starve first. 1 week later, Siren understands the headmaid's cruelty, flashing back to Parma's menacing threat. Grimy and neglected, she laments that no one has come to clean the room, bathe her, or even feed her. Lying in her dirty crib, she screams internally, realizing everyone has abandoned her to die, leaving her smelly and starving. Suddenly, the door bursts open as a voice frantically calls out to the little one. Loan rushes into the room in a panic, carrying a basket and surrounded by a magical floral aura. "I'm so sorry," Loan cries as she reaches the crib, apologizing for not coming sooner as the crying baby reaches for her. In a cute, stylized thought bubble, Loan offers food while Siren mentally begs her to hurry up, thinking she's starving to death. Yummy Loan spoon feeds the baby, who eats with blissful satisfaction. Holding Siren, Loan apologizes for her plain food, wishing she could provide something better for the little one. Siren internally dismisses Loan's apology, feeling immense gratitude for the struggling maid who is the only one caring for her. This hardship, she thinks, is actually a great opportunity. As golden coins float by, she recalls that the more difficult the situation, the more points the Almighty rewards. She muses that making an illegitimate child like Targa Emperor is a huge achievement, but doing it under these rough conditions, she grins deviously, realizing the points she'll earn will be unimaginable as she imagines women fawning over her. Loan nuzzles the smiling baby, saying that when she smiles like that, it's hard to leave her. Looking at the mostly eaten plate of gruel, Loan says she wishes for nothing else but to stay with her. She hugs Siren sadly, wondering if that would be difficult. Clenching her fists, Siren thinks that once a god, always a god, and she always repays her debts. She silently vows to pay back all grudges and wishes twofold. With renewed determination, Siren clenches her tiny fists. She mentally reassures Loan not to worry and to trust her. The narration explains that the war intensified, and the Emperor and her father Targa headed for the border. 2 years pass, and a neglected toddler Siren sits in her crib, abandoned in the palace. She shivers in disbelief, wondering if her 2 years just vanished like a lie. The scene shifts to a military camp with tents and a bonfire. In a war room, a man reports to His Majesty that they are on the verge of conquering the Kirk's Highlands. A bearded man laughs, boasting that no defense can stand against the royal knights. The Emperor asks if Targa was in the vanguard again, and the bearded man hesitantly confirms. He then asks if Targa vanished right after the battle, and the bearded man, thinking of him disappearing like the wind, slams his fist down, calling him a fool. The Emperor rages, demanding to know why Targa fights to the death only to let others take the glory. The narration describes the feared Duke Burke Targa, known as the Master of Death, or the blood-drinking monster. He roams the battlefield with an aura-infused blade, only to disappear like the wind after a battle. The Emperor sighs, complaining that Targa never joins victory parades and lacks ambition, while the bearded man asks him to hold his ground. TSK, the bearded man thinks that Targa is either ambitionless or has none at all, and wonders how he even managed to have another child. The Emperor asks if the bearded man wants to go see the young lady now that the war is over, shocking him. The bearded man recalls the Emperor staring at the young lady's palace, fussing over kids' food, and looking like a fool while thinking of her. Leaning over the map, the Emperor complains that Targa left his children behind, while the aide notes he hasn't looked at another woman since the Duchess died. The old Emperor laments his worries in his later years and resents the gods for his troubles. He recounts his family's woes. His eldest died young, his other sons are capable, but Targa is a battle-obsessed youngest who neglects his family, including a newborn of unknown origin. The emperor asks the count if the child truly resembles Targa, questioning her hair and eye color, while the count admits he cannot remember. The emperor tries to dismiss his concerns, but the count insists it's not a trivial matter. He explains that the young lady could carry the imperial bloodline, and for the sake of legitimacy, they must verify this with Targa. The emperor strokes his chin, agreeing that the aide has a point and deciding to proceed. The scene shifts to a grand, snowy palace. A hand asks the young lady to stretch out her arms. A grown-up toddler siren, now with her hair tied up, sits patiently. Lowen gushes over how cute Siren is in her new red dress. Lowen sadly wishes the young lady could have pretty clothes like other princesses, apologizing for only being able to make plain ones. Suddenly determined, she announces that since she got a raise, she'll buy fabric next time, but is cut off by someone shouting, "Rowan Green!" Parma storms in, berating Lowen for dawdling and wasting time while Lowen protests she needs to change the young lady's clothes. Parma announces that the emperor is coming soon, shocking Siren. Parma orders a flustered Lowen to go borrow proper clothes from another palace, refusing to let the emperor see Siren as she is. Eek! Parma grabs Lowen's wrist, ordering her to go quickly, as Lowen cries out that she can't leave the young lady alone. As Lowen is dragged away, a panicked Siren waves and says, "Bye-bye." She continues to wave, mentally telling a worried Lowen to come back safely. Wah! Lowen cries as she's pulled away, promising to be back quickly and wondering how she could leave the young lady with Parma. Left alone with Siren, Parma shoves the toddler back into the crib. Parma points a finger at Siren, ordering her to behave for the emperor and not cause trouble. Hee hee! Siren flashes a fanged smile, which prompts a confused Parma to ask why she's smiling. HMPH. Parma smirks, daring Siren to keep that same energy in front of His Majesty. Parma orders the other maids to immediately replace the old curtains and cradle, and a maid complies. As maids bustle around her, Siren peeks over the crib, wondering aloud why she is smiling. With a demonic glint in her eyes, she thinks it's because she's delighted to finally send Parma away. As a carriage arrives at the palace, the emperor's bearded aide formally greets His Majesty. Parma and her maids greet the emperor and his aide, but he curtly tells them to skip the pleasantries. The emperor, now with a neat purple-tinged beard and hair, stands before Siren's crib, finally meeting her. Beaming with joy and surrounded by sunflowers, Siren cheerfully says, "Hello." The bearded aide blushes, gushing to the silent emperor that the young lady is as lovely as an angel. Blushing and flustered, the emperor wonders why Siren is acting so friendly, while his aide insists it must be because she likes him. Siren gazes up adoringly at the emperor, who looks down at her with a gentle, inquisitive expression. In a stylized thought bubble, the emperor muses that children her age are usually shy, while his aide concludes she has a gentle disposition. Watching from behind, Parma observes that Siren appears even more beautiful, suggesting she has been well cared for. The emperor turns and asks who is responsible for the child, and Parma steps forward to take the credit. Fidgeting with a cloth, Parma falsely claims she has cared for Siren day and night as if she were her own, remembering Lowen's face. Parma continues her saccharine act, praising Siren's gentle and intelligent nature, calling it her duty as caretaker. As Parma claims she wanted to do even more for Siren, the toddler's face darkens ominously. Wah! Siren suddenly slaps Parma across the face, letting out a piercing cry. A shocked Parma tries to quiet the screaming toddler, explaining to the startled men that she isn't usually like this. Parma leans in close, desperately pleading with the crying Siren to stop. As Siren wails, her demonic inner self smirks, thinking she won't stop that easily. A dramatic declaration appears. Starting now, it's payback time. Siren continues to wail in her crib, as Parma fusses over her, the emperor and his aide looking on. The emperor watches thoughtfully, wondering why the supposedly calm baby is suddenly having a fit. Scolding Parma, the emperor orders her to calm the baby down since she's the nanny. She nervously agrees. Parma forces a smile while trying to soothe Siren, wondering why she's acting out as the toddler glares at her. When Parma reaches for her, Siren slaps her hand away, screaming, "I hate it?" Siren reaches past Parma, her hand outstretched towards Loan, who has just arrived and looks on in shock. Loan returns to find Siren reaching for her and Parma calling her name. The Emperor summons Loan, asking if she is a maid here, and she timidly confirms she attends the young lady. Under Parma's sharp gaze, Loan quickly changes her story, saying she only visits the room occasionally. The Emperor crosses his arms and sizes up the nervous maid. Startled, Loan looks up as the Emperor points out that Siren is looking right at her. The Emperor orders Loan to hurry and comfort the child, and she rushes to the crib. Loan gently reaches into the crib, calling out to the young lady. Loan lifts Siren into her arms, and they gaze at each other tenderly, surrounded by pink flowers. Siren smiles sweetly, thinking her beloved Loan's name. Loan comforts the sad-looking Siren, while the Emperor and his aide watch. Siren suddenly hugs Loan tightly, much to the maid's surprise. Huh? Loan is confused, feeling something hidden inside the young lady's clothes. A sharp wooden splinter falls from Siren's dress, embedding itself in the floor with a dark aura. The Emperor stares intently at the object on the floor, questioning what it is. The aide pulls the sharp piece of wood from the floor, reporting to the Emperor that it's sharp enough to be a weapon. The aide holds the splinter to a terrified Parma's throat, demanding to know why a weapon was hidden in a baby's clothes. The Emperor confronts Parma, asking how she can claim to be the caretaker when she knows nothing about this. Panicked, Parma denies everything, shouting that it's absurd to call it a weapon. The Emperor's eyes narrow in suspicion as he realizes the splinter came from the crib's railing. As the Emperor questions the presence of a new crib, Parma panics, realizing the splinter came from the old, dilapidated one Siren used that very morning. The Emperor furiously points at Parma, accusing her of changing the crib just before he arrived to hide her neglect. A terrified Parma collapses to her knees, pleading with His Majesty. From the Emperor's view, Parma begs for forgiveness, falsely claiming she only wanted to present the baby in a better state. The Emperor recalls Siren's fit upon seeing the old crib, realizing it was clear proof of her poor treatment and a grave disrespect to the royal family. Now in Loan's arms, Siren blushes and shyly calls out, "D-Daddy." The Emperor, now wearing a purple face mask, laments that neither he nor her father could care for Siren, wondering how hard her life has been. The Emperor orders the Count to immediately take Parma away to be punished for her crimes as she stares in disbelief. 2 guards seize the screaming Parma, who desperately protests her innocence as they drag her away. As Parma's cries fade, the Emperor and his aide stand silently, watching Loan comfort Siren near the new crib. The Emperor startles Loan by asking for her name, and she timidly introduces herself. When the Emperor asks if she's been Siren's caretaker all along, Loan nervously denies trying to deceive him. Surrounded by flowers, Loan holds Siren gently as they share a quiet, tender moment. The Emperor commands Loan to cease all other duties and focus solely on caring for the child. Loan bows deeply, vowing to serve the young lady with her life on the line. Loan happily tells Siren she is relieved, and that the goddess helped them, while Siren privately cheers that Loan's attitude will surely earn her a bonus. Snuggled against her maid, Siren thinks that while faithful Loan believes this was a lucky coincidence, it was all part of her plan. Siren recalls her plan unfolding, remembering the moment she made eye contact with the Emperor. In a flashback, Siren remembers channeling her power, sending a vision of water toward the Emperor. She knew the Emperor hesitated to throw the water at her, but that he would ultimately be unable to ignore her vision. Siren thinks that placing her in a hidden corner of the palace, rather than at the Duke's estate, presented a huge opportunity to exploit. Reaching out, Siren thinks that her plan is not yet over, and calls out to her grandfather. Siren beams, joyfully reaching for the Emperor and shouting, "Grandfather!" The stunned Emperor and his aide watch as the aide points out that the young lady wants to hold His Majesty's hand. The Emperor is flustered, but his aide urges him to take his granddaughter's hand. The Emperor stands frozen with uncertainty as Loan holds the eagerly reaching Siren towards him. Siren keeps reaching, mentally encouraging him, thinking they've almost crossed the finish line. As the emperor remains motionless, Siren internally implores her grandfather to please take her hand. Frustrated by his hesitation, Siren internally calls her grandfather clueless, as a vision of a grand, intricate city flashes. He finally takes her tiny hand, only to pause and awkwardly ask if she is a girl or a boy. A flash of purple energy crackles in Siren's eye as she seethes with rage at her clueless grandfather. Narration explains that the day went according to her plan, and the emperor began visiting the palace more often. In a quiet room, the emperor sits with Siren, who now wears a simple green dress. Siren sits quietly, staring up with her large purple eyes, bubbles floating around her. The emperor gazes at Siren with a look of profound regret, thinking to himself, "To think I neglected you." Patting her head, the emperor proudly notes that she has grown strong and healthy, while Siren inwardly calls him dramatic. Visitors to Leighton Palace increased, though Siren notes they were mostly useless gossips. The narration continues, explaining that very occasionally, some visitors were quite worthwhile. Lowen compliments Siren on her new dress, and the toddler peeks from behind the maid's shoulder with a pleased smirk. Lowen shows off a beautiful new dress sent by Count Montez, while Siren privately muses that the emperor's aide has good taste. Holding the fine dress, Lowen sighs wistfully, hoping that His Majesty will visit again soon. The emperor lies awake at night, haunted by the image of the doll-like Siren calling him grandfather. A vision fills the room, showing the emperor vowing to claim Siren as his granddaughter before the duke can arrive. Siren watches Lowen, thinking that winning over the emperor is one thing, but there's someone far more important to deal with. She gazes at a golden-framed portrait of a handsome, blonde-haired man, identifying him as her father, Targa. Siren wonders if her unresponsive father is dead and hopes he comes back alive, as Lowen happily reveals the treasures in the room belong to the emperor. Lowen observes the precious golden artifacts, noting she just learned of their value and must be more careful cleaning them. The sound of elegant footsteps echoes as a woman in a pink floral dress approaches. A maid stands at attention, startled as the visitor remarks that this is only Leighton Palace, despite Siren being brought here by the emperor. The woman, identified as Grand Duchess Triana, scoffs dismissively, saying she doesn't need to see things to know their state. A maid explains to Grand Duchess Triana that the emperor insisted Siren was Targa's child, giving him no choice but to place her here. The Grand Duchess tells Siren not to worry, while the toddler internally questions the reason for her sudden visit. As another maid attempts to introduce herself, the Grand Duchess sharply cuts her off with a snap of her fan. A tense silence falls as the Grand Duchess stands before the small child. The Grand Duchess grips Siren's chin, questioning why His Majesty would come all this way to see her. A maid reminds the Grand Duchess that His Majesty granted the Grand Prince's residence in Clayton Palace to Siren. The maids discuss the powerful Marquis Milo's family and their distinguished lineage, noting the family's children can't be compared to an unknown child like Siren. While the Grand Duchess and her maid agree, Siren fumes, shocked they would say such things in front of her. The conversation is interrupted as two young boys burst into the room, shouting for their mother. The Grand Duchess greets her sons, Thebe and Harmal, who have just arrived and are clinging to her. Peeking from behind his mother's skirt, one of the boys points at Siren and asks, "Mom, is this her?" The boy declares Siren is the monster daughter, as a dark, ominous aura surrounds the toddler. His brother trembles, pointing out her red eyes are just like a monster's. The Grand Duchess warns her sons, Thebe and Harmel, to stay away from the creepy child and not cause a scene, or they'll be grounded for a week. Ignoring his mother, one of the boys grabs a fine dress, mocking the monster daughter for having such nice clothes. Siren fiercely grabs the dress back, shouting that it belongs to her. The two children engage in a tug-of-war over the dress, as Siren thinks he's picked a fight with the wrong person. Lowen timidly asks the young master to return the dress, explaining it was a gift from Count Montez. Without warning, the Grand Duchess brutally slaps Lowen across the face. As Lowen stumbles from the blow, a horrified Siren screams her name. In retaliation, Siren bites the Grand Duchess's hand, who cruelly notes how precious the maid is to her. With a look of pure rage, the Grand Duchess commands Siren to let go. The Grand Duchess furiously repeats her order while Siren and the boy continue their tug-of-war. Realizing her defiance will only lead to more humiliation for Lowen, Siren reluctantly lets go of the dress. The boy smirks triumphantly, calling Siren an idiot for giving up so easily. He dangles the dress just out of her reach, mocking her for her stubbornness. The Grand Duchess informs the kneeling Lowen that she will be punished by attending lessons at Clayton Palace. When Lowen protests that the Emperor ordered her to care for Siren, the Grand Duchess glares, asking if she's using His Majesty as an excuse. The Grand Duchess dismisses Lowen's concerns, ordering her to appear tomorrow before leading her sons away. Left alone, a tearful Siren clutches Lowen's apron, softly calling her name. Lowen embraces Siren, apologizing for being too powerless to protect her. Cradling the child, Lowen expresses relief that Siren is too young to understand what just happened. Lowen tearfully asks Siren to forget the horrible scene, hoping it doesn't scar her heart. With dark resolve, Siren vows to remember this humiliation forever. In a later scene, Lowen tells Siren she will be right back, asking her to play nicely with her doll. Framed by daisies, Lowen stands in the doorway with a determined expression before leaving. Siren waves goodbye, cheerfully telling Lowen to go, while the maid glances back worriedly. Waving her doll, Siren internally notes how she calmed Lowen down and wonders who Engie is. As a door creaks open, Siren thinks she understands why Lowen is so worried. The two boys, Thebe and Harmel, peek in, confirming Lowen is gone and mocking her for crying. The boys advance on Siren, smugly asking if she's ready to play again today. Narration explains the boys visit daily after Lowen leaves, which is the true source of her worry, flashing back to Lowen being slapped. Bam, two pieces of wood smashed together violently. The purple-haired boy holds a broken plank, sneering that the palace is so run down, no one will notice if things get broken. As the boys gleefully trash the room, narration reveals this is the real problem, while Siren watches with a wicked grin. The reddish-haired boy grunts in frustration while trying to break a piece of furniture. He asks his brother if they can break all the annoying stuff, but the other reminds him their mother said it belongs to the Emperor. One of the boys prepares to stomp on something on the floor. The boys decide it's not their fault if things that are already falling apart break, enraging Siren, who glares and thinks, "These little brats." The purple-haired boy, Harmel, glares at Siren, demanding to know what she's looking at because it's creeping him out. His reddish-haired brother, Thebe, salutes and observes that the gloomy ghost looks just like someone named Castile. Tisk, Siren scoffs internally at the obvious comparison since they're brothers, before freezing in shock, wondering if her father Targa has other children. "Hey, Thebe!" Harmel calls out, telling him to stop the gloomy talk so they can go play in the garden, and his brother eagerly agrees. Siren fumes that the brats ran off just as she was about to ask about Castile, but decides she can just ask Lowen later. With a soft thud, Siren's hand closes around a piece of wood, her plan for vengeance set in motion. Looking up with a fierce glint in her eyes, Siren internally declares that it's time for revenge on the little punks. Holding a wooden plank, Siren recalls her plan. She has perfectly memorized their routine, knowing Lowen and the boy's maid will come looking for them at lunchtime. Crash Siren begins her work, smashing a vase against a cabinet and thinking that now is the perfect time for revenge. With a powerful swing, she brings the wooden plank down, shattering an ornate treasure. Crack! The plank shatters a golden artifact before a precious purple crystal orb falls and shatters on the floor. Panting from the effort, Siren wipes her mouth with her hand and declares, "I'm ready." In a series of panels, Siren struggles to push over a heavy vase, urging it to fall and musing that for a 2-year-old body this is pretty good. Her head snaps up as a maid's voice echoes from the hall, calling for the young master. Harmel and Thebe burst into the room with their flustered maid in tow, who begs them to stop as Harmel celebrates getting there first. The maid looks on in stressed disbelief, reminding the boys they need to prepare for tonight's banquet. Kia. The maid lets out a piercing scream as she and the two boys stare in horror at the completely destroyed room. As the maid stammers in disbelief, Lowen arrives with a man and asks what all the commotion is about. A shocked voice exclaims over the wreckage in the young lady's room, the floor littered with shattered, priceless artifacts. Lowen rushes past the debris, anxiously asking Siren if she's all right. Siren throws herself into Lowen's arms, exclaiming she's glad to see her while privately thinking she's unhurt but out of breath from hiding. The boy's maid furiously scolds them for destroying the room out of hatred for the young lady, while Siren sits innocently in her crib. "What?" the boys shout back indignantly, threatening to have the lowly servant thrown out of the palace for daring to lecture them. As a crowd of servants gathers, one explains that the young masters trashed the room just as the sound of elegant footsteps approaches. A pair of elegant, pearl-adorned shoes steps into the chaotic room. An authoritative voice orders everyone to step aside as the Grand Duchess Triana arrives on the scene. Just as Harmel threatens to get the maid fired, the Grand Duchess appears in the doorway, furiously shouting her sons' names. Harmel, Thebe. Thebe runs to his mother to tattle on the rude maid, but she sharply tells him to hold his tongue. The Grand Duchess grips her fan, seething that she asked them to behave for 1 week, only for them to destroy His Majesty's belongings. "Mother, you're an idiot!" the boys shout up at her, protesting their innocence and asking why she's yelling at them. Looking at the broken vase, the Grand Duchess asks her sons skeptically if they are absolutely sure they didn't do this. She confronts Harmel, demanding to know who did it, but he frantically insists he doesn't know, and the room was already a mess. With a narrowed, calculating gaze, the Grand Duchess concludes that this must be a setup. "Guards," she commands, ordering them to search the area immediately, much to a nearby guard's confusion. Before the search can begin, the Emperor appears, asking the Grand Duchess what the rush is before he arrived. His authoritative voice echoes through the room as he demands, "Now tell me, what's all this commotion about?" In a moment of panic, the Grand Duchess realizes her children have been framed and that she must act quickly before His Majesty arrives, but it's too late. The Emperor's imposing presence fills the room as he repeats his demand for an explanation. He stands with his back to the viewer, his dark cloak casting a shadow over the tense scene with the Grand Duchess and her maid. The Emperor glares down at the Grand Duchess, reminding her it was her idea to go on an inspection, yet she couldn't even watch her own children. He then turns to a mustachioed man, commanding him to speak up if he has something to say, and the startled man stammers, A father, this is." The Emperor's aide kneels before him, gravely reporting that the treasure chest from Aragon, the statue from Delman, and Master Iblon's crystal orb have all been destroyed. As Lowen checks if she's hurt, Siren pouts, internally complaining that if the legendary future-seeing orb was so valuable, they should have guarded it better. Harmel Thebe, the Emperor, roars, his patience exhausted, as he demands they tell him the truth right now. "Mom," the boys cry, running to hide behind the Grand Duchess in fear. The Grand Duchess shields her children, trying to de-escalate the situation by insisting it's not as dire as it seems and that her children are innocent. A hand points accusingly towards Siren, and Lowen, as a voice suggests, they just blame that child for the mess. Surrounded by a cascade of flowers, Siren puts a finger to her lips, coaching herself to play innocent and act as naive as possible. The Emperor points a decisive finger, ordering a guard, over there, who immediately snaps to attention. The Grand Duchess panics, realizing that the only people who came and went all morning were the Grand Duke and his maid, leaving no other suspects. The Emperor glares furiously, scolding the Grand Duchess and the mustachioed man for their arrogance every time they visit the palace. As the two flinch, the Emperor's voice continues to berate them from off-screen, expressing his deep disappointment in their behavior. The mustachioed man timidly defends his children, pleading with the Emperor to show more trust in their bloodline and treat them with care. With a dark, thoughtful expression, the Emperor scoffs at the mention of bloodline, agreeing ominously that he should take better care of it. He then turns his heavy gaze towards Siren, who sits quietly in her crib. Siren internally questions the word bloodline before erupting in silent cheers, praising her grandfather for his unexpected support. The Grand Duchess protests that the child's origins are unclear, but the Emperor furiously cuts her off, questioning how she dares speak of bloodline now. He gestures to the wreckage, angrily asking if her troublemaking children are truly better than the quiet child before them. The mustachioed man stammers helplessly, asking what can be done, as the Emperor declares the boys will be disciplined and barred from this place. The man nervously suggests assigning guards to keep the boys in Clayton Palace, but then questions if such measures are truly necessary. The emperor delivers a stunning command to the man: change the palace. He cruelly reasons that since the palace is already falling apart, it's the perfect playground for his destructive grandsons. Holding her sons, the Grand Duchess cries out that his decision is outrageous, refusing to let her children live in such a rundown place. The emperor coldly challenges her, asking if she'd prefer they live in his own palace instead. Stunned into silence, the Grand Duchess stammers that it's not what she meant. The emperor dismisses them, canceling dinner and ordering the palace change to be made immediately before striding away. Harmel and Thebe throw a fit, screaming their refusal to live in the dump and crying to go home. A soft voice calls out to the young lady, and Siren turns to see who it is. Lowen stands there, beaming with a large bag on her back, ready for their new life. The boys spot Lowen and cry out in desperation, begging her not to leave them behind. Siren gloats internally over her successful revenge as the boys whine, blaming their mother and calling Siren a ghost. A grand, sparkling new palace stands ready for its new occupants. The interior is revealed to be just as luxurious and opulent. A new maid cheerfully greets Siren with a golden pitcher, wishing her a good morning. Siren greets Lowen, who marvels at the beauty of their new home, still in awe after several days. As Lowen muses on the emperor's fondness for the bloodline, Siren sighs internally, thinking, "Here we go again." Lowen excitedly tells Siren about being officially recognized as part of the bloodline, while a hungry Siren just wants to eat. Siren reflects that their current situation cannot last forever, knowing she must make a move. A golden ewer is presented to Siren as she sits at a table, poised for something important. Lowen presents a basin of water, announcing it's time to test for the power of water. A vision of the goddess Rosia appears as narration explains that wielding water is the first condition for being recognized as imperial royalty. Siren recalls hearing that all her relatives, like someone named Turvin, can control water and are usually trained by their parents. Lacking parents or a teacher, and born with a fire attribute, she despairs over how she's supposed to unlock any powers. Lowen explains that in a few months, Siren will be officially tested on her ability to use the power of water. Lowen brightly encourages Siren to extend her hand and try to draw out her innate power. Whoosh! A small tendril of water suddenly erupts from the basin. Lowen looks on, confused, admitting she's not sure what just happened. She thinks that it seems she messed something up. In his study, the emperor listens as the mustachioed man expresses his worries about the eastern settlement. The man assures the emperor that the east is fine for now, but the emperor wearily wonders how much longer he can sustain it alone. The emperor laments the lack of a proper successor, but flinches when the man suggests Targa as the strongest candidate. He explodes in frustration, raging about Targa abandoning his home to kill demons instead of using his power to save his people. A title card introduces the power of goddess Roskia, as an ethereal hand manipulates an orb of water. This power, a gift to the first emperor Eclipse, is the foundation of the Karanan Empire. While legend says the first emperor could create thousands of blades from water, that power has faded over time. But Targa was different. A vision shows him as a young boy, effortlessly wielding a powerful water orb. Narration reveals the high priest determined Targa's power echoes that of the first emperor, a potential not seen in generations. Everyone believed Targa could master all three aspects of water's power, filling the empire with hope and anticipation. Back in the present, a high priest stands before the emperor, who asks in shock, "What? Targa refuses to train?" The high priest reports to a troubled emperor that Targa seems to have no interest in his abilities at all. Narration reveals that Targa never trained, instead hiding his power and riding straight to the front lines upon growing up. The emperor asks the mustachioed man for any word on that boy, and the man reports that traces of Lord Targa were found near the Forest of Beasts. The mustachioed man playfully accuses the emperor of being distracted by his adorable new granddaughter, causing the emperor to look flustered. The emperor admits he was thinking of Siren, and the man confesses his envy, praising the emperor for having such a sweet granddaughter while he only has grandsons. Tapping the desk, the emperor muses that after a life surrounded by sons and grandsons, the idea of a girl in the family never crossed his mind. He proudly declares that the clever and endearing young Siren takes after him, as visions of her as a toddler and a baby appear. The mustachioed man suddenly asks if he may visit Clayton Palace, startling the emperor. When asked why, the man grins, explaining it's because the young lady is so adorable and he has something to deliver to her. A beautiful, intricate lace baby dress is presented as a gift. As two aides bring gifts, the mustachioed man remarks on the small clothes, prompting the emperor to declare he'll go along as well. The man beams, asking if the clothes aren't beautiful, but his aide reminds him he still has work to attend to. "I have business there too," the emperor insists, eyeing a shining gift box. Meanwhile, Siren makes no progress, splashing her hands fruitlessly in the water basin. Lowen's relentless training continues, but Siren remains stuck, unable to manifest her powers. Lowen brightly suggests a great idea, while a weary Siren internally panics, wondering what new trial awaits. Lowen reveals she heard from Sir Lucas's maid that mixing medicinal herbal powders into water can purify it. With a confident thumbs up, Lowen shows her absolute faith in this new method. "Lowen, stop!" Siren shouts internally, demanding to know who Lucas is and begging her maid to finally give up. A voice mocks Siren for being a mess as an elegant shoe steps into view beside her. Siren looks up in shock to see a smirking, dark-haired man in white robes looming over her. The man questions her presence in the new palace as Siren internally despairs. "Why are you here again?" According to Bielzer's Siren observation log, a black bird watches Siren eat jelly, thinking she's acting high and mighty, while Siren internally yells at the snooper. The dark-haired man casually pops a piece of the jelly into his mouth. He declares the human-made jelly surprisingly good, and Siren retorts that it's Lowen's special recipe. His playful demeanor vanishes as he sternly demands to know what her business is here. He leans in, revealing that a woman named Arwen is looking for her. A large, black wing spreads as the man scoffs at the nerve of Arwen, claiming to know her reasons better than Siren does. The man transforms into a large black bird, warning Siren not to underestimate that wench, just as Lowen's cheerful voice announces her arrival. Lowen enters the room, her happy expression turning to one of wide-eyed confusion. She panics, shouting about the sudden appearance of a bird, which now looks visibly nervous. Lowen furiously brandishes a broom, threatening the damn bird for bothering Siren, as the birdman declares he's taking Siren down. Siren watches the chaotic scene, concluding that the creature isn't a divine bird, just a big, strange one. A vision of a serene, silver-haired woman named Arwen appears, repeating the ominous message that she is looking for him. As the water in the basin ripples, Siren realizes that with Arwen now threatening her, she has no time to waste. With Lowen standing by with a broom, Siren sits with renewed focus before the golden basin. Lowen clasps her hands in delight, believing the young lady has finally understood her desperate feelings. Lowen offers to pour in the herbal powder, and Siren quietly agrees, nodding her head. Siren pours the green powder into the basin, determined to be acknowledged as imperial bloodline to secure the emperor's protection. Surrounded by glowing magical glyphs, she concentrates fiercely, knowing she absolutely must succeed to protect herself and Lowen. Lowen watches her young lady's intense effort, cheering her on with anxious hope. Lowen suddenly looks up, remembering to ask about the guest she had mentioned would be arriving. As the door creaks open, a calm voice observes that they look busy. A handsome, dark-haired young boy in a fine suit appears in the doorway. The boy, introduced as Lucas, the Carrick's Grand Duke's eldest son, enters and asks if he's arrived at a bad time. Lowen apologizes for not greeting him sooner, but Lucas graciously insists it's his fault for coming unannounced. Siren stares, putting the pieces together and realizing this boy is the Grand Duke's son, Lucas. Lucas kneels down before Siren, meeting her at eye level in a gesture of respect. He tells her that he's heard she is Uncle Targa's daughter, noting the resemblance and that he recognized her immediately. He offers a gift, asking if she likes cream jelly, and Siren listens intently, her eyes wide. Despite the kindness shown to him, the dark-haired boy Lucas feels a strange and deep discomfort in the palace. Lucas tells Siren he came to help, and she gratefully tells him she was just about to use his gift. Lucas notes her lack of progress, patting her arm and suggesting she's still too young, then invites her for jelly. A spark of light appears as his hand touches her arm over the ornate golden basin. Siren's eyes widen as she realizes what he's doing, internally questioning if this is what she thinks it is. Lucas is startled as the Emperor and the mustachioed man make a sudden entrance. As Lucas stands to greet his grandfather, Siren's hands hover over the golden basin, which begins to glow. Bang! A large surge of green, sparkling water erupts from the basin, shocking Lowen and Lucas. The Emperor asks if everyone is all right, while Lucas, hiding his suspicion that the surge was deliberate, explains he just stopped by to check on the young lady. Bowing to the Emperor, Lucas apologizes and takes his leave for class, and the Emperor dismisses him. As the Emperor glares, Siren internally complains about Lucas causing more work for Lowen before leaving. Siren muses on a strange pattern. She's always asleep for the Emperor's visits, but wide awake for Lucas's. A chibi Emperor watches Siren eat, commenting on how she picks only the sweets and is still tiny. The mustachioed man chuckles, telling the Emperor it reminds him of a young Lord Targa, as Siren internally fumes over the fuss they're making. The mustachioed man announces he has brought a gift for the young lady. He presents a lovely, handmade baby dress with lace, a gift from his wife. Lowen squeals with delight over the adorable dress, but as she moves to have Siren try it on, the Emperor sternly tells her to wait. The Emperor reveals his own gift, a magnificent and ornate glowing box. Siren and Lowen can only stare, captivated, as the brilliant gift box is opened. Both Siren and Lowen stammer, utterly shocked by the contents of the Emperor's gift. A delicate, high-quality fabric rustles as the gift is lifted from the box. Siren now stands transformed in a beautiful, elaborate white dress with rich red ribbons and accents. Weeping with joy, Lowen declares that the young lady looks like a stunning angel. A beaming woman asks Siren to turn for them, while the mustachioed man asks His Majesty when he prepared such a thing. The Emperor gloats that his gift is from the imperial tailor, while the mustachioed man fumes that his, made with love, was outdone. Lowen presents Siren to the Emperor, asking him if the dress doesn't suit her perfectly. The Emperor looks down, observing Siren in her new dress with a serious expression. Siren looks up at the Emperor, her bright purple eyes meeting his gaze expectantly. The Emperor's intense gaze meets Siren's innocent one. The Emperor gruffly admits the dress suits her very well, while the mustachioed man encourages a shy Siren. Lowen eagerly prompts the young lady to thank His Majesty, reminding her to use her etiquette training. Siren panics, having not paid attention in her lessons, as the Emperor and the mustachioed man challenge her to demonstrate her formal manners. Deciding to rely on cuteness if she fails, Siren takes a determined step forward. With a little wobble, Siren performs a perfect, adorable curtsy. Ack. She suddenly chokes and stumbles, falling forward. Oh no. The Emperor and the mustachioed man lunge forward in panic, crying out Siren's title. The mustachioed man catches Siren just in time, holding her as the Emperor looks on in shock. Phew. Siren opens her eyes and brightly thanks Count Montez for his gift. Overcome with joy and affection, Count Montez covers his blushing face. The Emperor watches the exchange, remarking that one can always tell when a gift is given with sincerity. Gritting his teeth, the Emperor glares angrily and mutters the name. Montez! Crash. At a dinner table, a fork is slammed down as a voice shouts, "You there!" Two men at a dining table gossip about how Count Montez was put under guard for a week, just for arriving early. A young man with dark hair, identified as Second Prince Carix, smirks, glad the uptight old man is gone. A woman in purple warns him not to take it lightly, noting the Emperor's harsh action is significant. The prince calmly continues eating his meal, seemingly unconcerned. The woman in purple presses him, revealing she knows he visited Clayton Palace and demanding to know why. Prince Carrick smiles, admitting with a sly look that he was simply curious about that child. As the woman in purple takes a drink, the prince vaguely dismisses her concern, saying he went just because. Prince Carrick leans forward with a knowing smile, repeating that he was curious about that child. The woman in purple questions her cousin's actions, asking why he'd waste time on a young, lone child with his responsibilities. She urges the young man, whom she calls Lucas, to restrain his considerate nature and focus on purification training with Cameline. A memory shows a robed wizard as the woman reflects on the symbolic weight of formal imperial training, which her son has already completed. She adds with a smile that his actions create a favorable impression, but Prince Carix interrupts, calling her mother. With a sly grin, Prince Carix leans in and asks his mother, who told her he went to Clayton Palace. In another room, a dark-haired man is asked by his aide about a new maid named Ellie, just as another servant announces a guest has arrived for his grace. The man suggests to the woman in purple that they greet the guest together, but she's surprised by the early arrival. The woman bids Lucas farewell, telling him to enjoy his meal as she departs, and he wishes his mother well. As Prince Lucas sits alone, a hooded figure approaches him from behind, calling his name. A man with reddish-brown hair smiles, announcing that the dessert he mentioned before has been prepared. A fancy dessert sits on the table as the man hopes it suits his taste, while an unseen person confidently replies that it should. A sinister voice remarks that no one who has ever tasted the dessert has had a single complaint. The scene shifts to an aerial view of a grand and sprawling estate. Elsewhere, Siren, in a new blue dress, is being fed a small cookie. Lowen praises the young lady for eating so well, and a delighted Siren exclaims how delicious it is. Lowen reminds her that another tedious training session follows her meal, causing Siren's happy expression to plummet. The scene transitions to a peaceful garden with a flowing fountain. Lowen and Siren have a picnic outside, with Lowen admiring the flowers and lamenting her busy schedule. Lowen asks Siren if she's enjoying the outdoors, and Siren quietly agrees that it's nice. Siren panics internally, realizing with dread that the pleasant outing is just leading back to more training. And so the princess went on her journey. Lowen closes the book, asking a sleepy-eyed Siren, nestled in her lap, if the story was wonderful. Embracing Siren, Lowen expresses her joy at finally having a quiet moment to read to her again. Siren beams, declaring that she loves playing with Lowen much more than training. Yawn. Both Lowen and Siren let out big yawns, and Lowen notes that the young lady must be getting sleepy. Lowen's hand gently rests near Siren as she softly sings a lullaby to her. Lowen watches over Siren, tucking her into bed for the night. As Siren sleeps peacefully, she internally notes that the Emperor grumbles daily but seems to like her, despite his chibi form complaining about her still being in a cradle. A single tear escapes from Lowen's eye as she sleeps. Lowen watches over a waking Siren, her expression full of gentle concern. Lowen's thoughts drift to happy images of Siren, realizing that simply seeing the child happy is enough for her. Clutching her chest, Lowen reflects on how selfish she had been before. Having a nightmare, Siren jolts awake, desperately shouting, "No, Rowan, no!" In her dream, a younger Siren runs to embrace Lowen amidst a field of pink flowers. Lowen is startled by Siren's thoughts as she watches the young lady sleep. Lowen gently reassures the frightened Siren, promising to stay by her side until she falls asleep. Now calm, Siren tells Lowen not to apologize and that she had a wonderful day with her. In a moment of quiet reflection, Siren thinks that the day was so fun, it feels almost unsettling. A memory surfaces of a past life. A girl happily leaves home, waved off by her mother on an ordinary day. The memory turns horrific as the mother is shown splattered with blood, a moment when someone precious was suddenly lost. Flash Siren's eyes snap wide open in bed, awakened by the traumatic memory. Dazed and alone, Siren looks around the room, weakly calling out for Lowen. She, a dark, hooded intruder, looms over her bed, silencing her with a gesture. Feeling a knife at her throat, Siren panics as the intruder threatens to kill the maid next door if she screams. The intruder holds up a glowing green jelly, lamenting that she woke up before his poison could work peacefully. The hooded figure smirks, boasting that the poison jelly was crafted with nutty, smooth, dedicated care. Her feet twitching in terror, Siren realizes she's been given poison. As the intruder forces the poison to her lips, Siren silently screams, refusing to die before meeting her father. Thwack! The assassin is suddenly hit by a powerful force and sent flying across the room. A new figure stands over the downed intruder, coolly remarking on his arrogance as Siren watches from her bed. A dark-haired man with glowing red eyes looms over the fallen intruder, his voice dripping with menace as he asks who gave him permission. From afar, the dark-haired man's question, "Who gave you permission?" echoes in the room as Siren peeks out from her bed at the scene. A nervous Siren looks up at the commotion, her wide purple eyes reflecting the sudden chaos. Her thoughts focus on the appearance of a new arrival, noting his golden hair. She then observes the man's piercing red eyes. Staring up at the imposing golden-haired man, Siren's mind connects the dots, and she hopefully thinks, "Dad." The golden-haired man, her father, looks down with an intense gaze and begins to speak. Thwack! But he whirls around, striking the dark-haired rescuer, who comments on the unexpected arrival of an uninvited guest. The dark-haired man smirks defiantly, telling the golden-haired man to consider himself lucky. Ugh! The golden-haired man violently grabs the rescuer's face, who cries out in pain. Holding the man by his cloak, the golden-haired man listens as the rescuer begs to be released, insisting he was only there to confirm something. The golden-haired man angrily questions why he let the child think he was her father, and the rescuer retorts that he had no other reason to be there. Awakened by the noise, Lowen rushes in, asking if the young lady is all right, as Siren internally fumes that her supposed savior is just making things worse. Lowen stares in utter shock at the chaotic scene, two men confronting each other over a defeated assassin, and wonders what is happening. She quickly scoops Siren into a protective embrace, frantically asking if she's okay. Still holding Siren, Lowen looks toward the golden-haired man's approaching boots and wonders why His Grace, the Duke, is here. The Duke turns his attention to the bound assassin, demanding to know whose orders he was following. Coke? Choked by the Duke, the assassin gasps that there were no orders. The Duke smiles cruelly, informing the assassin that his question wasn't a request for an answer. The terrified assassin can only stammer a fearful, "Why, yes," in response. Splat blood spatters violently across the scene. The Duke turns back to a horrified Lowen and Siren, coldly stating he was simply giving the assassin a choice. He finishes his chilling thought. The choice was to die quietly or die after some fun. Lowen pleads with the Duke to calm down for the startled lady's sake, but he ominously warns her that her turn will come soon. The Duke whisks Lowen and Siren away, moving with unnatural speed through the palace. Held tight, Siren despairs that after surviving an assassin, she now faces a father who seems even worse. Her thoughts race, realizing that even if Lowen escaped, the Duke's power means he would catch them in no time. Being carried away at high speed, Siren tearfully wonders if this is the end for her and Lowen. Whack the Duke suddenly strikes Lowen, who cries out in pain as she is forcefully separated from Siren. Siren panics as her father grabs her wrist, watching Lowen get taken away and wondering what she can possibly do. Just then, the mustachioed man and another guard arrive, demanding to know what's happening in the middle of the night. The mustachioed man, captain of the guard's Targa, reports his return and confronts the Duke about the commotion. Seeing him, Siren is overcome with relief, clinging to his leg and declaring that she's found her lifeline. Siren internally questions Targa's deceptive letter, as he explains to the Duke that it was the only way to make him return. The Duke glares at Targa, demanding to know if his true purpose was to confirm her bloodline or to negotiate. Targa retorts, asking the Duke why he caused such a scene instead of simply coming to him first to learn the truth. The Duke looks away, admitting that wasn't his plan, but he saw someone suspicious and followed them. He reveals that the intruder tried to use poison on the child, causing Targa to gasp in shock. The Duke explains that he saw the assassin pull out a poison jelly and swiftly subdued him for questioning. Enraged, Targa shouts in disbelief that they dared poison his granddaughter, as Siren angrily urges him to teach both her dad and the assassin a lesson. The Duke sits down, revealing that he personally inspected the poison found in the food. He holds up the glowing green jelly, stating that it's something His Majesty would surely find interesting. A menacing image of an animal's skull appears, a single drop of green poison glowing on its forehead amidst wilting purple flowers. The Duke identifies the substance as Rasma's poison, a form of black magic believed to have vanished over 100 years ago. The scene focuses on the name, emphasizing the grave discovery, the poison of Rasma. The narration explains the poison's dark history as an evil power from a forgotten region, supposedly eradicated a century ago. Targa shouts in disbelief, questioning the reappearance of Rasma's poison, while Siren smugly pats his cheek. The Duke interrupts, stating grimly that this is not the proper place to discuss such a serious matter. Lowen steps forward to take Siren, obediently addressing the Duke as Your Majesty. Confused by the command, Lowen looks up with a questioning, "Pardon?" as Siren is gently lifted from her arms. In a sunlit room, Targa sits in a red chair and speaks to a concerned-looking Lowen. As the Duke walks down a palace corridor, Targa internally notes that the Duke is moving Siren to the palace, likely worried about what he might do to her. The Duke smirks, remarking how interesting it is that Targa speaks as if he knows his childhood, causing Targa to stammer in shock. Targa looks down regretfully, mentioning something that happened in the past, but the Duke dismisses it, saying it's all over now. The Duke turns away, declaring that they have more pressing matters at hand. A gray-haired guard reports to the Duke that they finished their investigation, while Targa furiously questions how an assassin could have breached security. The Duke asks about the intruder, and the guard somberly reports that after being questioned, the man had a seizure and died. Shocked, Targa exclaims that he thought the assassin was alive, and the Duke grimly confirms that he was. The Duke draws his elegant sword with a steely expression. Thwack. The blade is shown piercing the already dead assassin's body. The Duke reveals that the assassin took his own life using the poison of Rasma. Targa reels in disbelief, stating that Rasma was wiped out, but the Duke coldly replies that his sword tells him otherwise. Targa yells for the captain of the guard, and a dark-haired man in a blue uniform promptly responds. The Duke commands the guard to summon Count Montez and conduct a thorough search of every palace on the imperial grounds, and the guard quickly agrees. The Duke clenches his fist, thinking of his own father and how, contrary to his grumbling, he might have felt. Looking up with grim determination, the Duke's resolve hardens. The scene shifts to the vast, glittering golden palace as a new day begins. A small arm stretches out as Siren begins to wake up. Yon Siren sits up in bed, stretching happily, and declaring that she slept so well. Her smile vanishes as she looks off-screen with wide, curious purple eyes. From her perspective, she watches Targa look out over the palace, as she considers how lonely it must be to live in such a place. She quickly shakes the thought away, internally scoffing at the idea of worrying about that grumpy old geezer, the Emperor, feeling lonely. Her thoughts turn back to the previous day's chaos, wondering what the outcome was. She vividly remembers the imposing sight of her father, recalling his overwhelming aura, closer to a demon than a man. She realizes how arrogant she had been. Sitting on her bed, she laments that after being so confident, she now doubts she could even face her father again. Startled, Siren lets out a shriek as her father suddenly appears in her room, announcing that she's awake. Trembling, she stammers, "Dad!" and asks why he's there so early. He places a hand on her forehead, asking if she's cold. As her father lifts her up, he asks why she is shaking. With a sudden realization, Siren thinks, ah. She panics internally for flinching so obviously, unable to hide her fear, as her father observes her with a serious expression. Whack Targa storms in, yelling at the Duke for scaring the child, while Siren internally cheers that her grandpa has saved her. The Duke coolly reminds Targa that he was told to come by morning, making Targa the late one, who flusters and dismisses the point. The Duke states he has something to show Targa, who looks on with curiosity. Continuing to hold Siren, the Duke declares that Targa won't be able to deny things once he sees the proof. He dangles a small, glowing object from his fingers. The Duke asks Targa if the item rings a bell. A close-up reveals a delicate, sparkling gold chain. The Duke holds the chain out towards a kneeling Targa. The Duke looks down with a knowing smirk, thinking to himself, "Proof, huh?" Sitting on the floor, Siren watches the tense exchange with an anxious pout. The Duke states that the chain is his, but he never gave it to Siren, leaving Targa to exclaim in shock. Siren internally reveals that she had a blue bird named Belzer steal the ring to use as proof. Glaring at her father, she mentally tells him this is payback for abandoning her mother, insisting that she is his daughter. The Duke calmly studies the gold chain resting in his palm. He remembers a woman with long, dark purple hair, conceding that he recalls one woman who might have had his child. He muses that she wasn't the type to steal, as Targa nervously tries to change the subject, insisting it's not the child's fault. Wah! Siren starts crying on cue, while her inner self cheers on her grandfather's excellent defense. Targa holds up the chain, arguing that even legitimate children are treated poorly in the palace, so what good is a ring anyway? With a chilling smirk, the Duke dismisses Targa's defense, declaring it all pointless. A young guard bursts in, breathlessly apologizing to His Majesty for the intrusion. Clank. The guard announces that they have successfully captured the culprit who aided the assassin. A dark-haired man with his arms crossed confronts Captain Targa, angrily questioning how he dares show his face after disgracing the royal family. The dark-haired man and his mustachioed companion chastise Captain Targa for arriving without his child and for his lack of remorse. The Duke casually asks what, precisely, he is supposed to feel remorseful for. Enraged, the mustachioed nobleman demands to know if the problem is that the Duke didn't pay off his illegitimate child, calling him an insolent little... The two noblemen quickly bow in apology to the purple-haired emperor, who has been observing the confrontation. The emperor calmly sets the argument aside for now, turning his attention to the captured culprit. The dark-haired nobleman introduces the young guard, Lucas, stating that he's been keeping an eye on the culprit. A woman in a purple dress named Ellie confronts Lucas in disbelief, asking why he never told her about his investigation and how he caught the suspect. Lucas explains that he was simply watching a new maid, who seemed out of place and had gone missing that morning. He continues, revealing that her suspicious late-night activities led him to report her to security after the assassination attempt. The gray-haired Count Montez reports to the Emperor that they searched the maid's quarters on Lucas's information. He presents their findings, two small, glowing vials of mysterious liquid. As a red liquid is poured, a voice explains that while it looks like ordinary poison, mixing the two vials together creates a different effect. A dark, shadowy energy erupts from the mixture, shocking the Emperor and a nearby guard. A voice clarifies that the poison's black magic appearance is merely for show. In reality, it's just an ordinary poison. The dark-haired nobleman reports that a bird given the poison died just like the assassin, proving the black magic theory was a red herring. He turns on Captain Targa, demanding an explanation for the unnecessary panic over Rasma's poison. While Targa fumes at being blamed, the Duke asks what the captured maid revealed, certain she couldn't have orchestrated the plot alone. Ellie and another lady gossip, wondering about the maid's motive, especially since she worked in Lucas's palace. The blonde Grand Duchess smirks, suggesting the maid's loyalty was merely excessive, before shockingly striking Ellie. The Duke turns, startled by the commotion, and asks the Grand Duchess what she just said. The Duke violently grabs Captain Targa to stop him from leaving, shoving aside a guard who tries to intervene. Blocked by the Duke, the dark-haired nobleman furiously demands he get out of his way. With an intense glare, the Duke warns him to back down unless he wants to lose face fighting someone beneath him. The nobleman points an accusing finger, sputtering that the Duke is arrogant, as Lucas watches in shock. Lucas observes the escalating chaos with a knowing smirk. Meanwhile, back at the Imperial Palace, Siren sits alone in a large, firelit room. Sighing with unease, Siren wonders what could be happening with her father and grandfather. She recalls being left behind when everyone rushed off to find the culprit, feeling abandoned and out of the loop. Sigh. As Siren longs for home, Lowen worries about the child's lack of appetite and energy. When Lowen offers her jelly, Siren recoils in sheer terror at the sight of it. Siren internally vows to never look at jelly again, while Lowen expresses concern that she's rejecting even her favorite treat. Lowen gently apologizes to Siren for not taking better care of her during such a difficult time. Lowen pulls the small, sad child into a warm, comforting hug. Siren clings to Lowen, admitting she's struggling in the unfamiliar palace and begs to go home. Her plea is cut short as she looks up in wide-eyed surprise. The Duke has appeared, asking Lowen if she is feeling unwell. Lowen nervously insists she is fine, but the Duke watches with a questioning gaze as she quickly walks away with Siren. Suddenly, The Duke's hand reaches out and takes Siren from Lowen's arms, startling the child. The Duke stares down at a terrified Siren, asking what she's plotting now, while she trembles in fear. Flinch. Siren recoils instinctively as her father's hand brushes against her hair. The Duke observes her fearful reaction, telling her that if she's going to struggle this much, she never should have set foot in the palace to begin with. The imperial family tree reveals Emperor Arnoa II, his sons Carix and Erno, and a fourth line showing Siren's mother, Father Duke Targa, and a deceased former duchess. Thump. At Meyer Palace, an angry fist slams down on a table. Carix, the Duke's brother, seethes with rage, declaring he never thought his brother, Duke Targa, would act so brazenly. He recalls how Targa always endured insults with indifference in his youth, wondering why he chose today to lash out in front of the Emperor. At Meyer Palace, Carrick scolds a dark-haired woman for getting provoked by someone beneath her, and she meekly apologizes. Tesk, Carrick lectures the woman, stating that if she can't rely on her background like Erno, she must at least be clever. The tense atmosphere hangs heavy in the room as Carrick stands over the chastised woman. The dark-haired woman notes that Duke Targa seemed unusually agitated today, and Carrick nervously agrees. Her thoughts turn to Ellie, pondering the events of the previous day with a flicker of concern. When Carrick asks if she knows Ellie, the woman flinches, frantically denying any connection to someone like that. Carrick calls her denial ridiculous, reminding her that Senov's interrogation is scheduled to begin this evening. The woman panics, realizing that if the interrogation proceeds, many people could be implicated, regardless of the truth. Carrick takes his mother's hand, reassuringly telling her not to worry. She looks up at her son, her expression a mixture of fear and fragile hope. With a chilling smirk, Carrick cryptically states that nothing has happened yet. Back in the Imperial room, Targa tells Siren that if she struggles so much, she shouldn't have come. Siren tentatively reaches out and touches her father's cloak. Looking up with wide, innocent eyes, Siren simply thinks, "Huh?" Targa flinches back in surprise at the small child's unexpected touch. He looks down at his cloak, bewildered by his own reaction, thinking, "Huh? Wait, what?" Thump. Targa bursts in, demanding to know what Targa is doing to the child now, as Siren thinks he seems less scary. Targa accuses Targa of bullying, who denies it, while Siren cheekily thinks to herself that it was actually fun. Targa coldly tells Targa to leave if he has no business there, prompting Targa to ask why he returned. As Targa notes, his father's quick return must mean the interrogation went smoothly. Targa's expression darkens. Targa delivers the grim news that the maid is dead, as Lowen holds a stunned Siren. Siren asks if the maid was connected to the assassin, and Targa confirms she took her own life before the interrogation began. Targa grimly adds that she stabbed herself in the chest 10 times, no less. He continues, explaining to a listening Targa that she managed to kill herself even while under guard. Targa smiles darkly, concluding the maid was prepared for this outcome all along. Looking down at Siren, Targa declares that the maid's suicide is the simplest solution to the problem. Enraged, Targa grabs Targa's arm, yelling at him to stop and asking what the child has done to deserve this. As Targa begins to walk away, Targa demands to know what he's talking about. Targa takes Siren from Lowen's arms, announcing that he is taking the child away now. Targa furiously demands to know where Targa thinks he is taking her. Walking away with Siren, Targa turns the accusation around, questioning his father's motives for keeping the unconfirmed child. Siren looks back, thinking that her grandfather wouldn't do something like that. Targa explains that since it will take months for Roskia's power to manifest, he refuses to let his father use the child as a hostage. He confronts his father, arguing it isn't safe to keep a nameless child, and Targa sputters that she's too young for a name. Reaching out his hand, Targa decisively states, "Fine, I'll give you a name." He points to the child, declaring her name is Estelle, for she will bring a star to his home. With a stern gaze, Targa asks if giving her a name means there will be no more incidents like yesterday. Estelle clutches her dress, quietly absorbing the weight of her new name and the promise attached to it. Estelle reflects that she didn't make a shallow promise, especially considering the beast-like side her father recently showed. Gripping his cloak, she realizes that from the moment she saw him, she might have known he was her father all along. Estelle looks up at her father with newfound determination, and he gazes back down at her. A frantic Targa begs Estelle to stay, asking why she would follow Targa to such a harsh place. Targa glances back, reaffirming his promise that once they are home, such incidents won't happen again. As Targa and Loan depart with Estelle, Targa watches them go, defeated. Looking back, Estelle silently scolds her grandfather, thinking how he could abandon her after all she had done for him. She recalls thanking him, realizing that without his help, she never would have met her father. Estelle puts on a show, waving goodbye with a loud crocodile tear cry of "Bwa bwa." Elsewhere, a red-headed guard laments that he should have stayed by his master's side, but his companion insists it wouldn't have mattered. A guard spots Targa and Estelle approaching down the hall, calling out to his captain in alarm. Duke Targa stands with a severe expression, while Estelle and Loan look on with apprehension. The red-headed guard runs toward them, demanding to know what is happening and who the child is. The guard confronts Targa, insisting he can't feign ignorance about the child, but Targa bluntly replies, "I don't know." Targa repeats his denial with a sly smirk as the frustrated guard thinks to himself that, of course, he would say that. Turning away, Targa coolly instructs someone to summon the carriage for their return to the ducal estate. Estelle clenches her little fists, excitedly imagining how beautiful the ducal estate must be. She fantasizes about soft bedding, delicious food, and a warm welcome from the staff. Estelle is overcome with pure, heart-pounding excitement for her new life. The scene transitions to the dark, dilapidated exterior of their destination. As Targa and his party arrive, a group of servants lines up to greet him, announcing his return. Estelle is horrified by the filthy, collapsing estate and unfriendly servants, screaming internally that it's fallen apart and she shouldn't have left the palace. The nervous servants fidget. Looking downcast and weary, held in Loan's arms, Estelle thinks that the servant's attire is far too shabby for greeting their master. A man in a bow tie and a woman with an updo step forward, cheerfully announcing the Duke's return. The man claims they have been managing the estate, but Targa coldly questions since when. The man stammers nervously, saying it wasn't long ago and almost calling out the name Castile. As the couple fawns over her father, Estelle feels something is off and wonders why the name Castile is familiar, before having a flash of realization. Her eyes widen as she remembers she's heard that name before. He's her brother. She recalls that her brother was in seclusion after the Duchess left, shocked to learn they are in the same residence. The woman with the updo instructs Loan to take the child to the empty second-floor inner chamber, but Loan hesitates. The man in the bow tie offers to wake the young master, but Targa declines, telling him to just lead them to the room. The woman with the updo leads the way as a compliant Loan follows with Estelle. As they walk up the stairs, an uneasy feeling that something is off begins to surface. Estelle takes in the shabby manner and considers her brother, who won't even show his face. She concludes with certainty that everything about this place is strange. The next day, Loan enters with a tray, cheerfully wishing the newly awake Estelle a good morning. Loan explains that a kind knight supplied them with baby food, noting his surprisingly gentle nature, and then tells Estelle she must be having a hard time adjusting. Loan whispers to Estelle, expressing her doubt that they should be using such a room. Looking at the antique furniture, Loan can't help but wonder about the room's history. Loan nervously asks if this was the late Duchess's room, but Estelle tells her they were assigned it, so there's nothing to be done. Loan confesses to Estelle that she feels she can ramble on because it seems like the child is truly listening. Confused at first, Estelle then cheekily thinks to herself, "You're only noticing that now?" Loan leans in, asking Estelle if she isn't the least bit scared of her father. As Loan frets that she still feels uneasy despite Estelle's adaptation, Targa appears in the doorway. Startled, Loan greets her master, asking why he's here so early in the morning. Targa announces he will be away for a while, causing Estelle to panic that he's leaving so soon. He explains that he left the battle in a hurry and needs time to wrap things up. He hands Loan a pouch, telling her to use its contents for whatever they need in the steward's absence. Estelle and Loan cautiously peek at the mysterious pouch. They gasp in unison as they see the pouch is overflowing with gold coins. Targa adds that if the pouch isn't enough, they can use things from the room or find more money in a drawer. Thump. Estelle reaches out in a panic, realizing she forgot to ask for something crucial. She internally begs him to at least give her a name before he leaves. Just like that, her father left, leaving Estelle and Lowen behind in the room. A woman with dark blue hair, introduced as Lady Lack, appears with a basket of flowers and a bright smile. A new maid thanks Lady Lack for her help, and Lady Lack replies that she must take care of Castiel's younger sibling. Now in a new blue dress, Estelle toddles curiously toward a glass cabinet. Tap! A hand suddenly grabs her wrist, stopping her in her tracks. Lady Luck holds Estelle's arm with a chilling smile, telling the baby, "That won't do," as Estelle stares in wide-eyed fear. A panicked Lowen rushes to Estelle's side as Lady Lack calmly asks her to understand the situation. With a chilling smile, Lady Lack warns Lowen to be careful, explaining the room holds great significance for Castiel and that they must not damage anything. Lowen apologizes profusely, and Lady Lack feigns concern, worrying that any mishap could make the young master resent Estelle. With a bright, cheerful wave, Lady Lack takes her leave, telling them to call her if they need anything. Lowen turns back to Estelle and apologizes again for the tense encounter, hoping the child understands. Estelle initially thinks that the staff seems so attentive and considerate, but her thoughts quickly turn dark, realizing this perfectly executed hospitality isn't kindness at all. She perceives their actions as a silent warning. They will provide everything so long as she never leaves this place, making her wonder what they are hiding. Glaring up at the seemingly oblivious Lowen, Estelle silently questions what on earth they are trying to hide here. Several more days pass under the guise of kindness, but the suspicious surveillance never lets up. Lowen brightly presents a basket full of fresh food to the young lady. Lowen cheerfully explains that the kitchen staff gave her every ingredient she asked for, or, more accurately, they simply didn't say anything when she took them. Estelle, reading a book, cheekily thinks that her poor maid isn't being paranoid. Lowen is being completely excluded. After days of being confined by Madame Lace's rules, Lowen finally begged for permission to take Estelle outside and was granted short outings. When Lowen tries to interact with the servants, she is completely ignored, prompting Estelle to think they're treating a noble lady as if she doesn't exist. Estelle muses that the only reaction she gets is when they are startled by her red eyes, but she doesn't expect more from these two-faced people. Yawning widely, Estelle begins to feel drowsy after a long day. Seeing that Estelle has already dozed off, Lowen watches over her for a moment. Lowen decides that while Estelle is sleeping, she will do some laundry and perhaps look for some fabric. Confident that the child won't wake up, Lowen slips out of the room. Snap! The moment her maid is gone, Estelle's eyes fly wide open. With renewed determination, Estelle sits up, thinking she will have to deceive sweet, naive Lowen for a bit. Thinking she has something important to check, she quietly slips out of bed and heads for the door. Estelle cautiously sneaks down the long, empty hallway, determined to explore. She recalls the first thing she learned while wandering with Lowen. They are the only ones staying on the second floor. Her second observation is noted as she sees the two stewards downstairs. She confirms her suspicion. The servants never come up past the first floor. Realizing there's less risk of being caught, she resolves to visit the one place in the mansion she hasn't been to yet. Her destination is the dark and ominous third floor. Estelle determinedly makes her way up the dusty, unkempt staircase. Looking around the desolate landing, she feels certain that her brother, Castiel, must be somewhere on this floor. She finds it hard to believe the young master's room could be on such a grim and neglected floor. Peeking from the stairs, Estelle overhears a woman complaining about that thing going to the kitchen and reflects that the palace would call the estate a monster's castle. Another servant, a man, asks the woman why she doesn't just kick the bothersome nanny out. With furious indignation, the woman exclaims that she wishes she could. Estelle recognizes the woman as Madame Lace and realizes they can't simply fire Lowen, who is a nanny from the imperial palace. The man in the bow tie reminds Lady Lack of their precarious situation, saying they're about to be thrown out penniless and shouldn't worry about the nanny. Lady Lack furiously retorts, blaming him for gambling away the mansion the Duke provided as child support. It all clicks for Estelle, as Lady Lack's sinister thoughts reveal her guilt over switching out items in the mansion. The man gloats about their perfect setup for thievery, with an absent mistress, an indifferent master, and the excuse of caring for the young master, TSK. He dismisses the idea of getting money from Satin, whose name sounds familiar, to a listening Estelle. He scoffs that Satin was a duke's daughter with only debts, and Estelle realizes with horror they are disrespectfully talking about the late Duchess. Clapping a hand over her mouth, Estelle is enraged by their blatant disrespect for her mother. Rustle. Her accidental noise startles the two conspiring servants. Lady Lack storms into the hallway, investigating the sudden sound. She wonders aloud if Castiel has crawled out of his room, but the man assures her he wouldn't dare, threatening to withhold his meals. Ho ho! Lady Lack boasts that the little rat trembles at the sight of her, as they've kept him in line since he was young. As the pair walk away to check on the other servants, Estelle watches them go from her hiding spot. Overwhelmed with guilt for her brother's suffering, Estelle quietly whispers, "I'm sorry." Peeking into the room, Estelle sees a young blonde-haired boy and realizes with a jolt that he has red, odd eyes, just like her. As Estelle recognizes him as her brother, the boy flusters, denying that he's the one she's looking for. The boy stammers nervously, trying to reassure her not to worry. As a confused Estelle looks on, the boy thinks to himself that she is much prettier than a monster like him. He calls her beautiful like the stars, and urges her to return to her clean room. Thump. Estelle suddenly grabs his arm, stopping him. Startled, the boy, Castiel, asks why she is suddenly grabbing his hand. With firm resolve, Estelle internally demands that he take her with him. Castiel asks what she means, and Estelle internally screams for him to take her to her room. Gripping his sleeve, Estelle repeats her demand out loud, asking him to take her to her room. Castiel stammers in complete shock at her request. Feigning terror, Estelle internally exclaims that she's scared of heights to convince him. The scene shifts to the dark, creaky staircase, emphasizing the unnerving atmosphere. Looking down the precarious stairs, Castiel shakily tells her to be careful. Castiel awkwardly carries a stiff Estelle down the stairs, confused by her strange posture, while she inwardly notes his concern. Trembling as they descend, Castiel urges her to hang on just a little longer. After setting her down, Castiel says he will be on his way, but Estelle grabs his hand, preventing him from leaving. He asks if she wants him to stay, but says it's not possible, as Madame Lace will be bringing dinner in 2 hours. Annoyed at first, Estelle quickly decides 2 hours is enough time for a look around. "Let's go then," she declares. Pushing open the grand door to her room, Castiel stares into the opulent room, completely awestruck. He begins to act nervously, making Estelle feel awkward with his fidgeting. Estelle internally vows to her brother that she's here now, and together they can change things. She offers him a biscuit, and he cautiously asks if it's for him. Eek! He refuses, but Estelle grows frustrated, asking why he is creating distance between them. Changing the subject, Castiel asks if she will skip her nap again tomorrow, confusing Estelle. Estelle looks up at her brother, pondering his hopeful question. Her face lights up with a brilliant smile as she enthusiastically promises to come again tomorrow. Castiel looks down at her, surprised and touched by her earnestness. A shy, happy smile finally breaks across his face. Later, Lowen tucks in a sleeping Estelle, chuckling to herself and promising to be back soon. Snap! The moment Lowen leaves, Estelle's eyes fly open. She was only pretending. The next day, Castiel peeks into her room, cautiously asking if she is alone. He explains he can't stay long because it's almost dinner, prompting Estelle to internally complain that he came too late. He shyly asks if he can sit next to her, and she pats the sofa invitingly. Sigh. He nervously reveals that he overheard Madame Lace saying the Duke will arrive in 6 nights. The two siblings look at each other, the weight of their father's imminent return hanging in the air. Castiel recalls seeing their father from afar, describing him as a giant he had to tilt his head back to see. Estelle thinks his description is an exaggeration and tells him he'll grow that tall too. His mood darkens as he sadly confesses his fear that he might not be the Duke's real son. Horrified, Estelle grabs his sleeve, demanding to know what nonsense he's talking about. She shoves a hand mirror in his face, insisting that they look the same. His red-pupilled eye is reflected starkly in the small mirror. Estelle declares that her eyes, his eyes, and their father's eyes are all the same, red. Castiel clutches his face in distress, unable to believe her words even with the proof. He thinks that his monstrous eyes are why the Duke avoids him, and why Madame Lace told him to hide, a truth Estelle realizes is their fault. Estelle seethes, understanding that the servants have been manipulating the abandoned boy all this time. As Castiel says he should go, Estelle glares, determined to stop him. She grabs his sleeve again, internally begging him not to leave. Castiel apologizes for having to leave, explaining that if he misses dinner, he'll have to starve. Shocked by his confession that he only eats once a day, Estelle demands to know what he just said. Estelle seethes with fury, realizing the servants are not only abusing but also starving her brother. Grabbing his hand, she declares with fiery determination that they'll go together. She inwardly vows to teach the villainous servants a lesson they'll never forget. The scene shifts to a starry night in the Kirk's Highlands, an area known for demonic beasts. In this new setting, a grown, blonde-haired man in a dark cloak stands over a defeated demonic beast. The man, a commander, looks on with a calm, stoic expression. A dark-haired subordinate approaches, reporting that the area is now clear. The subordinate asks what's on his mind, but the commander quietly dismisses his concern. A red-haired woman scolds a man named Mars for his tone, but he insists she knows he's right. Mars recounts that while they fought the beasts, it was their commander who ultimately wiped them all out. The red-haired woman complains that the Royal Knights will simply show up to plant their flag and steal all the credit. Mars agrees, adding they'll take the spoils of the hunt too, while the woman notes the commander's lack of desire. The commander's eyes glow as he shatters a barrier, coolly telling his subordinates they can leave if they wish. The red-haired woman cheerfully reports that she has already sent a message announcing the commander's return to the Duke's residence. He questions why she bothered since no one is waiting, but she reminds him he has a son and daughter who are his only family. He expresses doubt that they are his children, but the woman insists the baby looks just like him and young Master Castiel, making him flinch. The dark-haired subordinate then brings up Castiel, questioning the commander's decision to leave him with the Lace couple. As his subordinate points out that Castiel needs his father, the commander coldly insists the boy is better off without him. He reflects that for a killer like himself, the mere existence of children, Castiel and another, is overwhelming. His thoughts trail off as he's struck by a memory of a young, smiling Estelle reaching out to him. He suddenly realizes that the little girl doesn't even have a proper name yet. Ah! The red-haired woman excitedly points to the sky, announcing the appearance of the Star of Sira. The commander looks up towards the sky, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. They gaze at the Star of Sira, described as the brightest star that guides the lost back home. The commander muses that he is finally seeing the star for himself, a sight unique to the Kirk's Highlands. In a light-hearted flashback, a young Mars asks a young Castiel if they can get some of the famous local candy. A young version of the red-haired woman scolds Mars, who defends himself by explaining how rare Kirk's candy is in the capital. The red-haired woman apologizes to the commander for Mars's immature behavior. Huh? The commander surprises her by asking if the candy is truly that well known. He thoughtfully considers this new information, murmuring, "I see." The commander advises a confused Mars that while he shouldn't be greedy, he shouldn't let himself be robbed either. With a confident grin, the commander points forward, declaring that if there is a reward, they will seize it. The scene snaps back to the present, returning to Estelle and Castiel in the mansion. A panicked Castiel waves his hands frantically, insisting that he is perfectly fine. Apologizing profusely, he quickly retreats towards the door to make his escape. Estelle decides to sleep on her anger and formulate a plan to confront her brother in the morning. Snap. Her eyes fly open as a new, brilliant idea strikes her. She resolutely decides, She will not let their mistreatment of her brother slide any longer. The next day, Estelle finds Castiel, who greets the little one with a cheerful hello. He invites her into his shabby room, and Estelle cautiously steps inside. Castiel kindly offers his visitor a bite of his meal. He reveals the meager meal she left for him: a single potato, 2 small sausages, and a leaf of lettuce. Estelle seethes at the pathetic meal, realizing this is all he's been eating, while Castiel innocently asks what's wrong with the food. In response, Estelle proudly presents a handful of shiny red candies. Estelle watches her brother with focused intensity, her mind racing. With only 4 days until her father's return, she contemplates how to expose the servant's cruelty. Her first idea is to have Castiel report the abuse, imagining him crying to their father while the servants beg for mercy. Hee. She quickly dismisses the plan as hopeless, knowing her brother's timid nature and his gratitude for a few simple candies. Haya. She imagines herself as a tiny warrior attacking Madame Lace, deciding her second option is to rescue her brother herself. She quickly realizes this plan is physically impossible for at least 5 more years, as the imaginary Madame Lace easily grabs her. Back in reality, Castiel holds out the candies and innocently asks what's wrong with his little sister. The camera focuses on the handful of sparkling red candies he is offering her. Without warning, Estelle grabs a candy from his hand and pops it into her mouth. A shocked Castiel stammers her name as she continues to help herself to his candy. He desperately cries that it's his secret candy stash and asks why she's taking them. Teased Estelle stares back with fierce resolve, thinking that this is all for his own good. She defiantly shoves more candies into her mouth, stuffing her cheeks. Wah! Castiel starts to cry as she takes all his candy, but still meekly asks if it's tasty. With red candy smeared on her face, Estelle internally apologizes, convinced he'll suffer forever if she doesn't do this. She teaches Castiel a hard lesson about protecting what's his while thinking how tasty the stolen candy is. This tough love lesson continues for the next couple of days, with Estelle confronting a terrified Castiel. She systematically takes all of his food, and he eventually gives up trying to stop her. On the 3rd day, Castiel watches Estelle as she sits and eats. With a small, hopeful smile, he gently asks what she has for him this time. Estelle holds up a piece of food, as Castiel asks if it's like the cookies she gave him before. Her eyes gleam with purpose. The time has finally come for her plan. With her brother now starving and desperate, her timing is perfect. She whispers, "Brother," to get his attention, then pulls back, falsely apologizing that there's nothing left as she tugs his hair. She holds up a picture of a man and a woman, exclaiming, "This look." Castiel admires the drawing, calling it a famous fairy tale, but Estelle dismisses that as irrelevant. She points to the woman's necklace in the drawing, asking her brother what it is. Castiel says he doesn't have a necklace like that, nor the other jewels she points to. He mentions that Madame Lace owns all these things, which makes Estelle's eyes narrow with suspicion. A sudden realization dawns on Estelle as she looks at the picture again. She understands that the tiara in the drawing is one of the items that belongs to Madame Lace. Gritting her teeth, Estelle finally comprehends what has been happening. As Estelle purposefully walks away, Castiel peeks out and asks where she is going. He anxiously calls after her, asking if they will see each other tomorrow. Pausing, Estelle confirms her theory. Madame Lace forced Castiel to steal the late Duchess's possessions. She heads down the hall, recalling that Madame Lace's room is on the same floor, opposite her brother's. Determined, she vows to gather evidence of their crimes before her father returns. She silently approaches Madame Lace's door, reaching for the handle. She carefully peeks through the crack in the door into the dark room. Believing this will be easy, she quietly slips her foot inside the room. Tiptoeing, Estelle stealthily enters the unsupervised room. She gets on the floor to look under the furniture, deciding to find the jewels first. She pictures the hoard of stolen jewelry, convinced they must have stashed it somewhere nearby. She figures they hid it somewhere accessible but safe, her eyes landing on a bag of red candies. Remembering her brother mentioning Madame Lace's candy jar, an idea sparks in her mind. Believing there must be a clue there, she reaches for a flower-shaped candy dish on the floor. Suddenly, she freezes, overhearing a voice from outside the room complain that they lost again today. A furious Madame Lace argues with a man, who retorts that she shouldn't act high and mighty since she lost everything too. The man insists they must win it all back in one go so they can buy the title she covets. Madame Lace and the man enter the room, shocked to find it in disarray and wondering who was there. The man angrily questions who could have entered, reminding her that this isn't some random house. Madame Lace declares their need to reclaim the house and title, prompting the man to call Castiel a nuisance. TSK. The man sneers that the house would be his if not for Castiel, but admits leeching off the Duke's money isn't all bad. Imagining a vast treasure, the man vows they will bleed the Duke dry and then reclaim the title. The man questions their plan while Castiel is alive, but a chuckling Madame Lace assures him there are plenty of ways to handle it. Crash, believing the Duke won't want to see the child, an enraged Madame Lace smashes a vase. Startled by the crash from her hiding spot, Estelle wonders if someone has entered the room. Estelle appears cautiously from her hiding place, looking nervous. A hand suddenly grabs Estelle's arm, and a voice demands to know how she got in here. Oog, a tear wells up in Estelle's eye as she looks up in pain. Wah. The man violently shakes Estelle, who cries out in terror. Waha, tilde. As Estelle continues to cry, the man angrily tells her to quiet down. A brown-haired maid rushes in, crying out, "Yeah, young lady!" TSK. The maid, now holding a sobbing Estelle, is chided by the man for not being around when he was searching for her. Madame Lace arrives, angrily questioning why the child is in her room as the maid apologizes. Cradling the crying Estelle, the maid confronts Madame Lace, vowing to report her neglect to the Duke. Madame Lace furiously orders the maid to get the child out immediately, and the maid apologetically bows. As the maid leaves with Estelle, Madame Lace anxiously asks the man if he thinks the child overheard them. Phew. The man sighs in relief, callously remarking that both the brother and sister lack any charm. He then adds that the situation isn't entirely bad, piquing Madame Lace's curiosity. A wicked smirk spreads across the man's face as he relishes his cruel idea. The thought echoes as a vision of shattering red gems symbolizes his violent intentions for the children. The maid, holding Estelle, worriedly asks if the young lady is all right. She gently places Estelle on a small couch, confessing that the ordeal nearly gave her a heart attack. As Estelle wipes her tears, the maid tells her she could have simply asked for candy instead of sneaking around. The maid makes Estelle promise not to wander off alone again, to which the little girl just sniffles. Promising to get her some water, the maid leaves Estelle alone for a moment. The moment the maid is gone, Estelle quickly reaches inside her dress. She pulls out a stunning hoard of stolen jewels which spill from her dress. Estelle holds up a large, sparkling brooch, seeing her reflection and thinking that her maid, Rowan, could have helped sooner. Ha ha! Exhausted but triumphant, Estelle celebrates her grand success in stealing the evidence. The next morning, Rowan brings a tray of food to Estelle, who is waiting on her bed. Estelle thinks to herself that with the jewels gathered, all that matters now is her father's return today. She resolves that they will need a decisive blow to deal with the shameless lace couple. Estelle refuses the food, prompting a concerned Rowan to ask if she's not feeling well. Clutching her stomach, Estelle claims to have a tummy ache, sending Rowan into a panic. Rowan offers to get a doctor, but stops short when Estelle gives her a sharp look, silently telling her to wait. Rowan recalls yesterday's incident, worrying about leaving Estelle alone again after finding her in the lace couple's room. Deciding she can't leave her, Rowan scoops Estelle into her arms, insisting they go to the doctor together. Carrying Estelle, Rowan stops another maid in the hall to ask for help. Ugh. The other maid recognizes them as the troublesome duo and hesitates, afraid of what Madame Lace might say. Rowan pleads for help, explaining the young lady is sick, but the other maid callously brushes her off, claiming to be too busy. As the rude maid walks away, a stunned Rowan can only stammer in disbelief. Rowan apologizes to Estelle, who is feigning pain, and promises to figure something out. Overcome with worry, Rowan decides she has no choice but to take the young lady to the doctor herself immediately. The rude maid blocks Rowan's path, coldly telling her to get out of the way. Rowan despairs, wondering why everyone is so heartless and fearing for the young lady's health. Estelle moans and presses her flushed face into Rowan's shoulder, putting on a convincing act of sickness. Rowan. It hurts. Estelle whispers, causing Rowan to panic and beg her to stay conscious as a nearby maid stops in alarm. Rowan grabs the frozen maid's arm, desperately begging her to call a doctor. As the maid stares, Rowan pleads again, insisting that the young lady is in terrible pain. A sharp sound echoes through the hall, signaling an abrupt interruption. Another servant announces, "Everyone, bow in respect," as the household staff turns to see a man in a fine suit arriving. With a dramatic flourish, the notice declares that the blonde-haired, red-eyed Duke of Berk has returned as the household staff bows. The man who partners with Madame Lace fawns over the newly arrived Duke, obsequiously welcoming him back. The Duke questions the man and Madame Lace, coldly asking if there aren't more people living in this house. The Duke asks his red-haired knight where the children are, but is interrupted by a desperate cry of, "Your Grace!" that startles him. It's Rowan, holding a seemingly weak Estelle, who tearfully explains that the young lady is unwell. The red-haired knight demands to know what's happening, and Rowan cries that no one in the household would help her. The Duke sternly commands Rowan to hand Estelle over to him. Rowan nervously complies, placing the fainting Estelle into her father's arms. Holding his daughter, the Duke observes she has no fever and wonders what she ate, recalling she was fine just yesterday. Rowan has a flash of realization, recalling Estelle ate candy from Madame Lace's room, which makes the woman and her partner flinch. The Duke silences a terrified Madame Lace with a single word and a glare that could freeze fire. Cradling his daughter, the Duke icily berates the Lace couple for failing to manage food, summon a doctor, or give any excuses. The Duke orders his red-haired knight, Terroir, to bring Castiel, but Terroir reports another man named Mars has already gone to his room. A sudden shout that there's a problem makes the Duke's eye widen in alarm. A dark-haired man named Mars bursts from a room, stammering about the young master as a body lies on the floor behind him. Mars announces that the young master is unconscious, and Estelle looks distressed while feigning weakness in her father's arms. A promotional banner displays various characters, offering a glimpse into other available stories. The Duke rushes to his son's side, calling out Castiel's name before holding the boy's limp, faintly breathing body. The Duke demands to know what happened to Castiel, but Mars can only report that he found the boy already unconscious. Huff! Huff! Madame Lace and her partner arrive at the scene, panting and looking shocked. Madame Lace begins to stammer an excuse as Estelle continues her act of being unconscious in her father's embrace. A dark, furious aura surrounds the Duke as he demands a full explanation for the state of his children. The man with Madame Lace collapses to his knees, desperately insisting this is all a misunderstanding. Madame Lace claims Castiel was fine yesterday, but the Duke scoffs, contemptuously asking if his son looks fine now. The man protests that blaming them for the children's feeding is unfair, accidentally admitting they only gave them potatoes and milk. Hook! The man instantly claps a hand over his mouth, realizing his disastrous slip of the tongue. Madame Lace desperately tries to cover for her partner's mistake, claiming the young master has always been a frail and picky eater. In a sudden pivot, Madame Lace points an accusing finger at Rowan, shouting that it's all the maid's fault. Madame Lace falsely accuses a stunned Rowan of coveting the Duchess's belongings the moment the Duke left. Continuing her tirade, Madame Lace claims she and her partner are loyal servants who stopped Rowan from stealing and are now being framed. Rowan swears she's innocent, but the Duke glares, coldly stating that she has been at odds with him since her arrival. The Duke asks Madame Lace for proof, calling her accusations irresponsible without any evidence to back them up. Seizing the opportunity, Madame Lace's expression turns gleeful as she eagerly claims they absolutely have evidence. She triumphantly declares they know Rowan stole the Duchess's jewels and urges the Duke to inspect the late Duchess's room. Madame Lace confidently leads the group toward the Duchess's room, ready to spring her trap. She specifies her accusation, a diamond brooch gifted by the king, which recently appeared on the black market. Madame Lace claims the seller's description perfectly matched Rowan, who now sports a sinister, knowing smirk, revealing her part in the plan. She explains they've been monitoring Rowan, waiting for the right moment to catch her in the act. Pointing to the Duchess's vanity, Madame Lace declares that the precious diamond brooch is gone. Kaya Madame Lace trips and falls forward, landing directly on the stolen jewelry hidden beneath a cloth. Rowan holds a now alert Estelle and smugly taunts the fallen woman, as Estelle thinks about the effort it took to set the stage. With a vengeful glare, Estelle thinks that the Lace couple will now pay for the crime of insulting her people. The man stammers, asking why the brooch is there, but the Duke icily asks if there is a reason it shouldn't be. The Duke's eyes glow menacingly as he pointedly asks if the brooch was perhaps supposed to be somewhere else. The man begs for mercy, claiming it's all Rowan's scheme, but the Duke coldly asks if he has anything else to say. The Duke's hand tightens on his sword as he gives a final warning. Keep talking if you value your life. The Duke gives a silent order to his knight, Terroir, who responds with a grim, "Yes, your grace." A knight in full armor apprehends the shrieking Lace couple, who plead that the accusations against them are false. A desperate hand reaches out as the man screams for the Duke while being dragged away. The scene fades into a dark, blood-red texture, signaling a grim end to the confrontation. Mars, the dark-haired man, rushes in to announce that he has brought Castiel to the doctor. The Duke orders the physician to check on Estelle as well, and Rowan quickly agrees. The red-haired knight, Terroir, reports to the Duke that the children's living quarters are unsuitable and must be reassigned. The Duke quietly processes Terroir's report with a serious expression. He makes a firm decision, ordering that the children be moved into his own quarters. In bed, a frail and flushed Castiel rests fitfully. Terroir reports the doctor's findings. Castiel is small for his age due to malnutrition, but is expected to recover quickly with proper care. The Duke turns his attention to Estelle, and Rowan confirms the young lady was diagnosed with a similar case of malnutrition. Estelle is inwardly shocked by the diagnosis of malnutrition. She recalls grabbing the doctor and threatening him to be less blunt about her condition, much to his bewilderment. While Rowan tearfully agrees Estelle looks thinner, Estelle thinks her plan is working, though she questions if her father is blind. Terroir relays that the physician will send medicine and assured him of a swift recovery with proper care. Looking toward the Duke, Terroir adds that the physician emphasized the importance of familial warmth. The Duke's hand clenches as Terroir suggests he become more involved in raising the children. "Find someone suitable for the task," the Duke coldly commands, leaving Terroir stunned. The Duke flatly refuses, and Terroir looks on with disappointment. He concludes it would be best for everyone if someone else raised them, a pained look crossing his face. In a dark moment of self-loathing, the Duke believes it's better this way than letting a monster like him touch them. A couple of days pass after the commotion. A cheerful Rowan enters with a tray, asking if the young master is awake. Castiel answers from his bed, and Rowan says she let him sleep since he seemed so peaceful. A proper, nutritious meal is placed before the boy on a silver tray. Overwhelmed with emotion, Castiel's eyes well up at the sight of the food. He chuckles, realizing this wonderful new reality is not a dream, confusing Rowan. A flashback shows the meager meals of watery soup and bread he used to receive. Wiping a tear, Castiel explains his disbelief, while Rowan gently chides him for crying. A hand gently wipes his face, as he's encouraged to eat and regain his strength. Thwack Castiel recoils from Rowan's touch, startling her. He quickly apologizes, explaining his insecurity about his eyes when people get too close. From the floor, Estelle pops up to declare that her brother's eyes are the prettiest. Rowan smiles warmly, agreeing with the little one. She reassures Castiel that she always thought his eyes were beautiful, bringing a happy blush to his face. Estelle smugly thinks that she and her brother have grown close and everything is fine. As her father's footsteps approach, Estelle reflects on her recent improvements in health and communication. Bang the Duke throws the door open, demanding to know if they've finished their meal. His sharp eyes scan the room as he wonders if the food is being served correctly. Terrified, Castiel immediately begins stammering an apology to his father. He begs for forgiveness for everything, confusing the Duke. Ha! The Duke scoffs, demanding to know how his son can apologize without knowing his mistake. Castiel flinches, unable to form a response under his father's cold gaze. Estelle bravely steps between them, defiantly declaring, "I don't like that." HMPH. She resolves to stop her father from bullying her trembling brother. The Duke dismisses her babbling, and Estelle grows frustrated with her own pronunciation. A nearby knight translates her words, causing the Duke's eye to twitch in annoyance. Eek! Both children jump in fear as Estelle privately notes how intense her father is. She points accusingly at the Duke, demanding to know why he's questioning them. The knight translates again, telling the Duke that his daughter told him to stop, which seems to land a blow. The Duke turns on Roan, demanding an explanation for the children's rudeness, and she stammers that they are just young. Terroir arrives with a smile, announcing he's finally found the Duke. The Duke asks for a report, and Terroir reveals a pouch of gold, explaining the interrogated couple were well-known crooks, making them easy marks. Terroir informs the Duke that the criminal couple was more vicious than anticipated, lamenting the time the mansion was left in their care. The Duke listens as Terroir reveals the couple secretly sold the late Duchess's jewels, prompting him to realize more than just diamonds were stolen. Terroir expresses his frustration, explaining that despite their interrogation, the couple is now denying they ever saw any jewels. "That's a lie," the Duke declares, just as Castiel speaks up, bravely stating that Madame Lace ordered him to bring the jewels. Terroir is stunned that the couple forced the young master's involvement, while a frightened Castiel immediately apologizes, fearing he's done wrong. Panicked, Terroir hastily reassures the young master he isn't being scolded, but explains the investigation is stuck because the culprits keep denying everything. Castiel realizes they can't track the stolen goods on the black market without knowing exactly what's missing. There are 13 red gems. With startling clarity, Castiel perfectly recites the stolen treasury: 21 green gems, 8 blue gems, and 132 gold coins. Castiel finishes his detailed inventory, adding a pendant to the list and confirming there were several hundred jewels in total. A silent moment hangs in the air as the Duke, Terroir, and Rowan stare in awe at the two children on the bed. Snap Terroir claps his hands together, having just had a brilliant idea. Terroir and Estelle share a look of excitement as Estelle thinks about how incredibly cool her big brother is. Terroir eagerly asks Castiel to accompany them, saying his help is needed, which makes the boy blush and stammer if he's truly useful. Estelle beams with pride, realizing her brother, whom she thought was weak, possesses an amazing hidden ability. The Duke suggests they all go together, and Estelle eagerly chimes in, wanting Rowan to come with them too. With newfound purpose, the Duke turns and walks toward the door, ready to act on the information. He pauses for a silent, contemplative moment, a subtle aura of power gathering around him. TCH, the Duke walks ahead, annoyed by the cheerful group following him, which includes Terroir, Rowan, Estelle, and Castiel. Mars rushes to the Duke, holding a letter and announcing its arrival from Marquis Milos. The Duke turns and addresses Mars by name, causing the dark-haired man to respond with a confused yes. With a menacing shadow cast over his face and glowing red eyes, the Duke quietly asks, "Am I scary?" A terrified Mars breaks into a cold sweat, unable to do more than stammer, "What?" In a moment of sheer panic, a chibi Mars mentally despairs over the terrible hardship he's enduring. The scene transitions to a pristine white castle gleaming under a bright sky. On a sunny day, Castiel reads a picture book about a princess to his sister Estelle on the floor. Thwack! Estelle abruptly slams her hand onto the book, pointing at a drawing of a rabbit. She eagerly asks about the drawing, and a flustered Castiel asks for clarification, to which she simply replies, "Yep." The book's illustration details a princess's basket filled with treats, specifically listing muffins, cookies, and candies. Estelle asks her question again, realizing with a flash of insight that her brother possesses a photographic memory. Recalling how he recited the jewel count, Estelle feels a wave of relief, finally understanding she was wrong to think him useless. Rowan enters the room, smiling as she observes the siblings getting along while reading picture books together. Castiel expresses surprise about a trip to the Imperial Palace, but Estelle confidently declares they will be fine. As Rowan prepares to leave, Estelle eagerly shoos her away while Rowan explains she has an important mission to accomplish before she returns. Click. After Rowan leaves, Estelle turns to her brother and calls his name. With tears welling in his eyes, Castiel looks down as Estelle holds up a flower card, announcing, "Let's go pick this." Castiel then sees a card with raspberries on it and quietly asks what it is. Hand in hand, the two children venture into a sun-dappled forest. Holding the raspberry card, Castiel resolves to find them since his sister wants them. Estelle points ahead, urging him deeper into the woods, and he asks if they need to go further. "Let's just go a little further in, okay?" Estelle insists, pulling her brother along as they continue their journey. Estelle recalls overhearing maids gossiping about a place deep in the forest where many raspberries grow. She also remembers seeing two men discussing how a certain Sir Targa used to enjoy picking raspberries. The bearded man had joked that Targa seemed like a baby who'd like jelly, which annoys Estelle as she holds a piece of jelly herself. Estelle reflects on her plan to raise her brother as a spare and the need to pay attention to her father's favorability. She considers her brother a backup plan, but concludes that their father must remain their primary protector. With determined eyes, Estelle decides that to secure her father's protection, they must bribe him. While she imagines comically kidnapping her father, she quickly acknowledges that such a plan is absolutely impossible. Holding her brother's hand, she settles on a more practical approach, bringing their father things he likes, since tastes don't easily change. As they walk, Castiel questions if she's sure they'll find raspberries, to which Estelle confidently replies, "Yeah." Estelle leans in to whisper that a scary monster is nearby, shocking Castiel, who asks why she didn't say so sooner. She quickly corrects herself, stating it's not a monster but a bird, leaving Castiel to wonder, huh? A flashback shows a smiling, dark-haired man explaining a large black bird has been circling the forest, as Estelle thinks of him as her ex-boyfriend brother. Now deep in the woods, Castiel nervously asks his sister if she's sure this is the right way. Estelle just looks up with wide, uncertain eyes, offering no reassurance. Meanwhile, at the residence, the Duke reviews documents while Terroir timidly tries to get his attention. Terroir presents a candidate's file, noting they only served for 6 months at the Rubens Marquisate. The Duke dismisses the applicant, reasoning that short tenures suggest a lack of diligence, while long ones hint at embezzlement or old age. Terroir admits it will be difficult to find more candidates for now, and the Duke reluctantly accepts the situation. Turning to leave, the Duke instructs Terroir to prepare the report he mentioned earlier, and Terroir agrees. Terroir internally questions the Duke's intense focus on hiring servants, then suddenly stops as he notices something on a desk. The Duke asks what's wrong, but a flustered Terroir quickly dismisses it as nothing. Bang! Mars bursts into the room in a panic, calling out to His Excellency. He stammers that a big problem has occurred, and the Duke calmly asks him what it is. The lady and young master have disappeared. Mars cries, and the Duke's face contorts with fury as his eyes glow a menacing red. The scene shifts to the grand and imposing throne room of the Imperial Palace. An elderly man with a white beard, the Emperor, sits on his throne and acknowledges the arrival of a woman in red. A man with a mustache eagerly tells His Majesty they can now question the woman who has just arrived. The Duke is being investigated for requesting Royal Knight documents and claiming ownership of prisoners and spoils of war. The mustached man reports to another noble that Duke Targa's prolonged stay in the capital and reinforced defenses are suspicious. A bearded man remarks that the Duke must be hiding something by guarding a ruined estate, though his companion questions if it isn't his right. Terroir clenches his fist, angrily thinking that goods won on the battlefield rightfully belong to the one who earned them. An advisor decries the Duke's selfishness, but the woman in red defends him, stating he is only claiming what is his. The Emperor slams his fist down, bellowing for silence to end the bickering. Pointing at the woman in red, the Emperor decides they should just ask her directly instead of arguing amongst themselves. He asks the woman if she suspects Targa of anything unusual, and she is visibly startled by the direct question. Rowan nervously claims she doesn't know and cannot speak on such certain matters. An advisor sternly reminds Rowan that she is still a servant of the Imperial Palace. A dark vision reveals the Duke's power to freely manipulate human blood. Rowan realizes this is beyond her ability to handle, fearing that if the truth spreads, it will harm the young lady. Feigning ignorance, Rowan claims she has rarely seen the Duke, having been busy caring for the child. The Emperor leans in, asking what about the child, causing Rowan to gasp in surprise. The Emperor's face is a mask of stern concern. With a loud bang, the Emperor silences an advisor who tries to speak. He urgently asks if the child is properly cared for, as Rowan panics, hoping the vile man wouldn't leave a child unharmed. The Emperor scoffs, musing that the girl must be living comfortably with a new name, and then asks what it is. Rowan is forced to admit that the child has not yet been given a name. Still no name, the Emperor asks in disbelief, as Rowan quietly confirms. "I knew it," Rowan thinks with a jolt, remembering the Duke promised to name the child but failed to do so. Enraged, the Emperor shouts that the insolent fool will be held accountable immediately. Back at the Duke's estate, Terroir learns the children went into the forest and asks a maid why she didn't stop them. She apologizes, assuming they were supervised. The Duke pants for breath as he desperately searches through the woods. He tries to calm himself, thinking the mansion's barrier will keep them safe, and they couldn't have gone far. But an unshakable anxiety grips him as he clutches his chest. Wiping his brow, he wonders why they would run away, just as he discovers a patch of raspberry bushes. He stops, staring at the abundant, sparkling, wild raspberries. To his surprise, he finds Castiel and Estelle standing with other children near the berries. A painful memory surfaces of being warned that poisonous wild raspberries could be fatal. He recalls his younger self asking if eating them would stop people from calling him a monster or a witch's child. In a haunting flashback, a young, white-haired version of the Duke defiantly eats a poisonous berry, blood staining his lips. In the flashback, a young boy with dark hair points at the young Duke and calls him a loser. The young Duke, bleeding from the mouth, wonders in confusion why the poison isn't working on him. The dark-haired boy and his companions laugh cruelly at the young Duke's failed attempt. As laughter echoes, a shadowy figure mocks Targa, knowing wild raspberries could never kill him. Back in the present, the Duke's hand stops just short of the raspberry bushes, caught in the memory. He clutches his head, questioning his sanity as the painful memory resurfaces unexpectedly. He looks up at the darkening sky, noting that it looks ominous as he stands in the forest. The Duke reflects that he doesn't understand love, viewing it as a fragile thing he doesn't dare to touch. He recalls the feeling of holding a trembling baby Estelle, completely unsure of what to do. He then remembers seeing his frail son, Castiel, and feeling utterly helpless to aid him. The Duke remembers his heart freezing, unable to offer words of comfort he himself had never known. Shaking off the past, he clenches his fist, resolving to focus only on finding the children. Suddenly, a sharp sound pierces the air, and the Duke turns abruptly toward its source. His eyes widen in alarm as he recognizes a scream and pinpoints its location. Meanwhile, Castiel and Estelle's small feet tread through the darkening woods. Estelle continues to lead her brother by the hand, pulling him deeper into the forest. Castiel looks around nervously, telling his sister that he thinks they are lost and there are no raspberries here. On the verge of tears, Castiel pleads with his sister to just go back home. As rain begins to fall, a tiny panicked Castiel worries that they don't even have an umbrella. Estelle suddenly gets his attention, urging him to look at something as he turns, confused. Estelle looks up in delight, surrounded by glowing orbs of water that seem to float around her. Ting. As she asks if he sees it too, a surprised Castiel realizes the water is hovering. She smiles, telling him that's not all as she prepares to do something more. Estelle reaches out and touches one of the larger water droplets with her finger. A protective sphere of water forms around the two children, shielding them completely from the rain. Gasp! A chibi Castiel stares in amazement, exclaiming that a barrier is forming above them. Estelle looks on with a determined expression, maintaining the magical water shield. Despite Castiel's fear, Estelle refuses to leave, crying that they must find raspberries now since they may not get another chance. She tugs on her brother's arm, begging for more time, while he nervously insists they have to go back. Pulled off balance by his sister's insistence, Castiel begins to fall. Wah! Castiel cries out as he trips and tumbles to the forest floor. A worried Estelle immediately apologizes, but he quickly reassures her he's okay, checking if she was hurt. Castiel flashes a brave smile, insisting that a small fall like that doesn't hurt him at all. Suddenly, the two children stop, their attention caught by something just ahead in the bushes. They've discovered a large, sparkling patch of the raspberries they were searching for. Raspberries! Castiel shouts in excitement as he and Estelle hurry toward the bushes. The siblings arrive at the raspberry patch, their faces bright with success and delight. Estelle apologizes again for knocking him over, but points out that it led them to their goal. In a cute chibi form, Estelle happily declares her brother a perfect 100-point brother for his efforts. Castiel asks if they have enough, but Estelle wants a little more. He agrees to pick a few more before they leave. Suddenly, Castiel shoves his sister out of harm's way with a cry of, "Watch out!" as she screams. With a branch sticking out of his shoulder, Castiel grimaces in pain, but tells Estelle to hide behind him. Holding a small stick, Castiel bravely confronts a monstrous red snake, warning it not to come closer. The giant crimson snake hisses, its menacing green eyes fixed on the small boy. Castiel tells his sister he will hold the monster back and urges her to run and call for the adults. Estelle points in terror, trying to warn her brother of the immediate danger right in front of him. "Danger," someone yells, as the massive snake lunges toward an unsuspecting Castiel. A faint, confident smile appears on the Duke's face as he arrives on the scene. In a blur of motion and blue light, the Duke intercepts the snake, his sword flashing to protect the children. As the snake's severed body falls, the Duke stands over it, remarking that he's finally found them. With his sword still drawn, the Duke glances back with a triumphant smirk. Peeking from behind her brother, Estelle timidly calls out to her daddy. Estelle panics internally, realizing they've been found and that their father must be furious. Seeing the crushed raspberries, the Duke thinks that instead of a scolding, they're in for a much worse fate as he menacingly addresses them. Estelle flinches, bracing herself for the punishment she believes is coming. To their shock, the Duke pulls both children into a firm, protective embrace. Held tightly against her father, a confused Estelle once again whispers, "Daddy?" The Duke's hand gently rests on her back as he thinks to himself, "Never." Ever again, he vows internally, holding them close with a relieved expression. Sobbing into his father's coat, Castiel apologizes, blaming himself for taking his sister outside. As the Duke releases them, Castiel explains that Estelle wanted raspberries, prompting a surprised look from his father. The Duke's expression softens as he looks down at his daughter. On the verge of tears, Estelle offers her father the handful of squished raspberries she managed to save. A close-up reveals the small, sparkling raspberries nestled in her palms. The Duke stares at the berries, thinking they look just like the ones from his painful past. He is hit with a memory of the dark-haired boy and his friends laughing cruelly at him. Estelle thinks that even though the berries are ugly, they hold the feelings of her and her brother. The Duke gently takes one of the small, crushed raspberries from Estelle's hand. He calmly places the raspberry in his mouth, closing his eyes. The Duke opens his eyes and, with a thoughtful expression, declares that it tastes good. Estelle protests, telling her father it's dirty, but he calmly announces their adventure is now over. Gently placing his hand on her head, the Duke tells her it's time to go home. He looks down at Estelle with a soft, gentle gaze. A wave of understanding washes over Estelle as she looks up at him. Her face breaks into a radiant, joyful smile. The Duke watches her, a rare, genuine smile gracing his own lips. Carrying his daughter and holding his son's hand, the Duke leads his children home through the woods. Back at the estate, a frantic Mars asks what happened, while Terroir reports being unable to find the Duke. Mars curses in frustration, wondering where the Duke is, as the maid Rowan looks on worriedly. Rowan clutches her dress, filled with regret and blaming herself for leaving the children alone. A knight suddenly spots something in the distance, shouting for the captain and pointing ahead. A narration announces the Duke has returned, walking serenely toward them with both children safe. Handing the girl to Rowan, the Duke explains the children got lost and instructs her to care for them. He then addresses his children by name Castiel Seira, officially naming his daughter. Now held by Rowan, Sierra sweetly asks her father if they can go for a walk together, and he smiles. Sarah and Castiel look up at their father with hopeful, excited eyes. The children joyfully agree to the walk. The scene shifts to an outdoor training arena with wooden practice dummies. Chang's two swords meet in a powerful clash, sparking with blue energy. A flurry of strikes sends blue energy slicing through the air toward a training dummy. A white-haired version of the Duke clashes mid-air with Terroir in a fierce sparring match. Terroir is thrown back, collapsing to the ground from the force of the blow. The Duke stands over Terroir, who groans in defeat on the ground. Terroir yelps in alarm as he finds the Duke's sword pointed at him. The Duke, now with white hair and a dark cape, coldly asks if he will continue, prompting a tiny defeated Terroir to surrender. The Duke taunts Terroir about his lack of stamina, questioning if he's been slacking on his training. A nervous Terroir thinks to himself that, even though the Duke is saying that, it seems he is actually in a surprisingly good mood. Two other nervous knights step forward to ask if they can attend this year's victory celebration. A brown-haired knight passionately pleads their case, saying they're in their prime, only to be silenced by the Duke's sword at his throat. The blonde-haired Duke threatens the terrified brown-haired knight, asking if he should send his head to the celebration first. A man with black hair and red eyes intervenes, calmly addressing the blonde man as Duke. The scene shifts to a heartwarming portrait of Rowan, holding a cheerful Sierra, while Castiel stands beside them. The Duke approaches them, and Rowan explains that the children were so eager to see him that she couldn't stop them. Sierra looks up at her father with a bright, adoring smile. The Duke gazes down at his two children, his expression soft yet distant. As the Duke walks away, a group of other knights laughs and mocks him behind his back. The scene flashes to the masked, white-haired Duke, questioning Mars's insufficient training, prompting Mars to flee back to his drills. Returning to the present, the blonde-haired Duke officially addresses his children as Castiel Seira. Castiel looks up at his father, his eyes wide with surprise. Sierra looks down, quietly acknowledging that her name is now Sierra. Overjoyed at the attention, the children excitedly ask their dad to explore the castle together. During the tour, Terroir points out the dining hall and a poorly kept flower bed, which Castiel notes with disgust at a nearby spider. After the tour, a hand gently brushes Sierra's blonde hair as a narration mentions the tour received feedback. Sierra shouts her one-word review of the castle. It's old. She internally lists the problems she saw up close: cracked walls, endless cobwebs, and broken floors. Realizing her father also thought the castle was old, Sierra panics at the sudden, dreadful thought that they must be broke. Castiel peeks out from a doorway, calling for his sister, Sierra. Sierra, now in a different dress, greets her brother, and Rowan explains she was planning a walk in the garden for her. While walking in the garden, Rowan asks about breakfast, and Sierra happily replies that it was delicious. Sarah reflects that she had no idea her father's casual comment would lead to such drastic consequences. Thud. Creak. A sudden noise interrupts their walk, causing the family to turn in alarm. A young man in an apron and cap appears, looking just as surprised as they are. A confused Sierra listens as the man explains he was just about to wake her up. The man points to a pile of rubble, stating that the main building was standing right there yesterday. He insists the building was there, gesturing frantically at the empty space. A wide view reveals the entire main building has vanished, leaving only a field of debris as the group realizes it's completely gone. Rowan nervously asks Mars what's going on, and he excitedly announces the main building is being rebuilt. Mars gushes that the Duke demolished it overnight with his sword in what he calls a magnificent sight. The Duke appears before them, standing proudly amidst the dust and rubble. He smirks down at his children and asks them if they like his work. Horrified, Sierra thinks to herself that she doesn't like it at all. Their house has been destroyed. Kya! A chibi Sierra has a mental breakdown, screaming that this isn't what she wanted. The Duke calmly explains that they are rebuilding everything because the old place was too dangerous for children to live in. Rowan tries to soothe a distressed Sira, suggesting they can sleep in the annex for now. Just then, Terroir runs up, urgently calling for the Duke. He announces that Marquess Milos of the Royal Knights has come to see him, piquing the Duke's interest. The Duke quietly wonders why Marquess Milos would be visiting. The scene flashes to a dazzling view of a treasure chest overflowing with gold and gems. Glimpses of more treasure chests and gold bars fill the screen with sparkles. Marquess Milos, a distinguished blond man in a red coat, stands in a magnificent treasure hall. Ya tilde. As Milos greets the Duke, a tired Sira lets out a loud yawn. Kia Milos unfurls a scroll, and Sira internally cheers, thinking they'll have plenty of money to rebuild the house. The Marquess announces that the Duke will receive all the lands and treasures he conquered, leaving the Duke shocked and questioning the decree. Milos is taken aback, asking the Duke if he truly didn't know about this. Milos clarifies that since the Duke didn't approve the nationalization of his spoils of war, His Majesty instead granted them to him directly. Sira panics, realizing her father might refuse the treasure, which would be disastrous now that their house is destroyed. She quickly whispers to her brother, beckoning him closer to enact a plan. Marquess Milos, realizing the Duke never requested this, smiles as he believes he understands the misunderstanding. He remarks that he always found it strange, as a man of the Duke's integrity would surely never covet the spoils of war. As Marquess Milos offers to take away the treasures, grrrr, Sira stands defiantly before him, protecting the chest. No. It's ours, Sira screams, fiercely staking her claim on the newfound wealth. The Duke watches his daughter, a flicker of surprise on his face at her possessive outburst. Daddy, this is ours, she yells, prompting a laughing Marquess Milos to finally recognize her as the newly arrived child. In a flash, the Duke's sword is at the Marquess's throat as he darkly warns, "Do not touch them." With a menacing glare, the Duke intensifies his threat, declaring, "Do not lay a hand on my children." Pinned to the floor, a terrified Marquess Milos stammers an apology to the enraged Duke. Mars suddenly appears, urging the Duke to calm down and pointing toward the children. He explains that the little ones have taken a liking to the treasures, thinking to himself how well Sira and he have done. Mars argues they should make the children happy, especially with the cost of rebuilding, leaving the Duke to ponder his words. A nervous Marquess Milos attempts to take his leave, bowing hastily before the Duke's slight smile. He suddenly stops, exclaiming in panic that the numbers for the Kirkus Plateau don't add up. An inventory reveals that mines, ancient artifacts, and precious jewels are all mysteriously missing. The Duke grips his sword with a knowing smirk, watching the Marquess's growing panic. As the children look on, the Marquess stammers, asking the Duke how he could have possibly known. Sira looks on with sudden understanding, thinking to herself that this is just like what she saw before. She vividly recalls the unbelievable memory her brother had shown her of these very events. "My deepest apologies, Your Grace." Marquess Milos cries from his knees, as the Duke thinks that the amount is far too small. As the Marquess promises to recalculate, the Duke coolly dismisses him, ordering him to deliver the spoils to his daughter instead. Surrounded by a floral aura, a deeply moved Sira looks up at her father and whispers, "Daddy!" Chibi Sara revels in her new position, thinking with a smirk, "This is the taste of power." HMPH. As Marquess Milos returns with the remaining treasure and begs for mercy, a smug Sira looks on with her arms crossed. As per her instructions, Sarah's brother meticulously inventories all the spoils, earning her praise. Gazing at the massive hoard of treasure, Sira wonders just how many battles her father had to fight. Her eye is caught by a large, sparkling blue object that she assumes must be a jewel. As she reaches for it, she wonders why something that looks like a simple rock is among the treasures. Sizzle. The moment her finger makes contact, a wisp of steam rises from the rock's surface. "Ah!" Hot Sira yelps, snatching her hand back in pain from the burning stone. Rowan rushes to her side, expressing shock that a mere rock could be so incredibly hot. Rowan. I got burned, Sierra complains, but the maid simply urges her to come quickly and get dressed. An imposing gray-haired man adorned with numerous medals makes a sudden, regal appearance. The entire household staff bows deeply as the distinguished man, clearly someone of great importance, enters the estate. A knight informs your majesty that the duke is on his way, but the man states that won't be necessary. The maids nervously report that the person his majesty is looking for is nowhere to be found. Now, nonsense. That's not true. The emperor roars, refusing to believe the report from his aide. He furiously denies caring about that little child, insisting he's only there for another reason entirely. His rant is cut short as a small voice from behind him asks, "Grandpa?" He turns to see Sierra, held by Rowan, reaching out to him with a bright, happy expression. Overcome with emotion, the emperor sweeps his granddaughter into a massive, joyful hug. "She remembers me," the emperor gleefully tells his aide Montes, who silently notes how he'd pretended not to care. As the teary-eyed emperor begins to invite them to the palace, the duke appears and coldly orders him to put Sierra down immediately. The duke, now identified as Targa, stands firm in the doorway, his cold glare fixed on the emperor holding Sierra. Later, in a calmer moment, the emperor sits with the children, looking over a book with an interested Sierra. "Big brother wrote it for me." Sierra proudly tells him, causing the emperor to look at her, moved. The emperor appears lost in thought, prompting his aide Montes to cautiously address him as Your Majesty. The emperor's expression turns serious as he addresses the duke by name, "By the way, Targa." He looks toward the duke standing in the doorway and asks how long he intends to just stand there. The emperor gestures wildly, complaining about the state of the house and saying he nearly fainted upon seeing it. He insists they send the children to the palace, but the duke flatly refuses, declaring, "I will raise my children myself." The emperor angrily declares this won't do and orders the duke to come outside. But Targa calmly accepts the challenge. His Majesty's aide, Montes, desperately tries to stop him as a nonplussed Sarah looks on. Montes sighs, thinking to himself how the emperor and duke's terrible communication skills have led to another fight. Sigh holding Sierra, Montes asks the emperor why he couldn't have been more patient after all the preparations, piquing the little girl's curiosity. The narration reveals the preparations were for a grand festival to honor Targa's contributions and improve his standing. As they leave, Montes encourages the young lady to bid farewell, and Sierra happily waves bye-bye to her family. Sierra clenches her hand, realizing the victory festival is the perfect chance to bring her father and grandfather closer together. Later, Sierra toddles through the library with purpose, as Rowan calls out to her in confusion. Castiel finds his sister scribbling on the floor and asks what she's doing. Sierra knows her dad won't go to the palace easily, realizing she'll need an accomplice for her plan to succeed. She presents her work to her brother and Rowan, who lean in to ask what it is. Wham! "Big brother? Bring this person," Sierra yells, pointing emphatically at her crude drawing. Sarah presents a clipboard to her brother Castiel, looking up at him expectantly. A friendly, red-haired man in a uniform arrives, offering to read a story to the young lady. After 6 hours of reading, the exhausted storyteller begs to continue tomorrow, but Sierra insists he read it now. He continues reading to the captivated children, narrating the moment the beasts appeared in the story. As the story continues, an illustration of a stern, blonde-haired knight appears as the narrator announces the knights have emerged. Outside, the emperor confronts Targa, questioning his refusal to attend the victory festival and warning him of the consequences. Targa dismisses his father's concerns, but the emperor presses on, calling his name. The emperor asks a pointed question. Does Targa want his children to grow up the same way he did? A vision of his smiling children flashes before him, a reminder of what's at stake. The emperor's words hit their mark, leaving the duke to ponder the horrifying thought of his children becoming like him. His expression hardens as he internally vows that he would never allow that to happen. Sierra, now in a frilly blue dress, happily kicks her feet while sitting on a chair. Looking at a book, she thinks to herself that she wants to go to the festival with her brother. She excitedly shoves the book at Castiel, who begins to object. A few minutes earlier, Sira had demanded that Mars read a book to her. Mars recognizes the story as the Bremen Town Musicians and asks Sira if she's interested in music. Sira internally schemes to research the festival to make her dad a star, then happily announces she's going. Her happy daydream is abruptly shattered by the stark thought, "We can't go to the festival?" Sira demands to know why they can't go, and Mars explains it's because the Duke has already stated he won't attend. Sira erupts in a furious tantrum, frustrated that her father is once again the obstacle. She wonders what to do now, lamenting the lost opportunity to make her father stand out. Her brother Castile suddenly bursts in, urgently telling Lady Sira that the situation is bad. He grabs her hand, telling her she needs to hurry. The scene transforms, showing Sira dressed in an elaborate pink gown surrounded by flowers. Rowan beams with pride at the finished dress, while Sira shyly asks if it looks okay. Rowan adjusts the gown, wishing she'd had more time, but expressing her relief with how it turned out. The scene flashes to a joyous festival, with crowds celebrating under colorful banners. Wearing a matching bonnet, Sira looks down and shyly says she is very happy. The Duke grants his permission to attend, and an ecstatic Rowan tells Sira they can go as the household begins preparations. Rowan gushes about the grand festival, noting how everyone has a great time except for the Duke, who stays home. Rowan wishes she could have made Sira even more stunning, lamenting that she can't wear a tiara like other noble girls. Sira promises Rowan she will walk with pride, then gives her an affectionate kiss on the cheek. Overjoyed by the gesture, Rowan pulls Sira into a hug, calling her adorable. A narration explains that the festival is a grand event where the entire empire unites. Sira clenches her little fist, her face set with determination. She imagines her father making a grand entrance on horseback, capturing the entire empire's attention at the festival. Sira pats a large, dark object, confident this is the perfect way to make her father's presence known. She looks up in surprise as a large black bird lands right in front of her. The narrator notes how the little girl in the pink dress and the black bird seem completely lost in their own world. The black bird fumes with glowing red eyes, jealous that it hasn't received a peck, as Sira asks what it's mumbling about. Her eyes widen in sudden realization as a thought strikes her. "Belzeb, your eyes are red," Sira exclaims, asking the now-named bird how he did it, to which he replies with a startled, "What?" Sira wonders if Belzeb can change other parts of his appearance, like his wing or beak color. Belzeb eagerly agrees to show her his abilities, but insists they do it somewhere else. A delighted Sira beams, her new plan taking shape. The scene transitions to an aerial view of the bustling festival route leading towards the castle. With a triumphant fanfare, the Victory Commemoration Festival officially begins. Joyful crowds celebrate in the streets, tossing confetti into the air. A dark-haired noble observes the unprecedented number of people, while a woman beside him notes it's because the decade-long war has ended. As a noble gloats about their victory, the emperor is informed that the Grand Duke's knights are approaching. The Duke's knights, led by the red-haired Mars on horseback, begin their procession through the cheering city. A snide noble scoffs that the Duke's knights were just bought with money, shocking his companion. A mustached aristocrat smugly announces the grand entrance of the royal knights. The royal knights make a grand procession on horseback, marching in perfect formation. A charismatic, blonde-haired knight named Erno tosses a handful of gold coins to the adoring crowd. The commoners cheer with delight, eagerly reaching for the falling gold coins. A fellow noble furiously scolds Erno for his reckless behavior, but Erno casually dismisses his concerns. The emperor watches Erno's display with a look of stern disapproval. The emperor turns away, disgusted, as the nobles behind him watch nervously. A heavy hoof steps onto the cobblestone street, heralding a powerful arrival. A formidable figure in black armor and a long cape dismounts from their steed. The crowd stares in stunned silence as the mysterious figure approaches. The cloaked figure is revealed to be Duke Targa, his piercing red eyes fixed forward. The people in the crowd gasp in shock and fear. The emperor watches with a smug smirk, acknowledging that Targa has finally arrived. Targa rides slowly through the parting crowd, holding a small, wide-eyed Sira in his arms. A shocked bystander points, asking in disbelief if Duke Targa is holding a baby. Sierra, nestled safely in her father's arms, gives the stunned crowd a bright, happy wave and says, "Hello." She waves cheerfully again, beaming at the onlookers. The crowd whispers in astonishment, wondering if the fearsome Duke of Berk has brought his daughter. Sierra knows her smile isn't enough to win them over, and decides it's time for the next phase of her plan. A small boy points in fear, calling Targa the Grim Reaper, but his mother quickly scolds him. The flustered mother quickly apologizes for her son's words. Suddenly, a massive black wing unfurls, emitting a brilliant, divine light. A woman in the crowd points skyward, urging everyone to look. Belzeb, now transformed into a magnificent glowing bird, soars above as the crowd cheers, hailing the appearance of the goddess's divine bird. Sierra looks up with a satisfied smirk, commending the now-named Belzer on his perfect timing. Sierra promises Belzer a present for a job well done, causing the bird to react with shock and delight. In a flash of light, Belzer transforms into a handsome, dark-haired man who asks Sierra if he isn't amazing. Belzer vows to earn a kiss from Sierra as she waves goodbye, promising him snacks when they return home. A single large black feather drifts down from the sky, landing gently in Targa's arms near Sierra. The little boy from before points up at the really big bird, as his mother insists he apologize to the young lady. Sierra kindly offers the boy the feather Belzer left behind as a gift. Surrounded by an aura of flowers, Sarah proudly declares that her father is not a divine envoy. Holding the feather, the boy and his mother realize that the rumors about Duke Berk are completely wrong. A man in the crowd begins to chant Targa's family name. Berk. Berk. Soon, the entire crowd joins in, cheering loudly for Berk. The crowd's fear turns to adoration as they thank Duke Berk for protecting their country, while he holds his daughter Sierra. Sierra beams from her father's arms, thinking that this grand reception is exactly what a returning hero deserves. Her expression shifts to slight surprise as someone calls her name Sarah. Duke Targa looks down at his daughter, a gentle light illuminating his face as they are surrounded by flowers. She looks up at her father and gives a confident little, Targa, holding Sarah with Castiel beside them, strides into the throne room, stopping before the emperor. The mustached aristocrat furiously confronts Targa, accusing him of showing up late just to steal the spotlight. Unfazed, Targa coldly suggests that if his brother finds it amusing, he should go fight the enemy himself next time. A smug smirk plays on Targa's lips as he challenges the emperor. The mustached aristocrat seethes, but the emperor calmly intervenes, declaring there will be no more nonsense on such a wonderful day. Sarah internally cheers on her grandfather, impressed by his intervention. The emperor reflects that while he made some distasteful choices, seeing the children makes it all worthwhile, especially now that they're the most beloved. A bearded noble rushes to the emperor, excitedly confirming that the bird they saw was definitely a divine bird. A woman agrees that the duke's arrival with a divine bird is an auspicious event, while the mustached noble grumbles in frustration. Hee hee. Sarah schemes to find a seat in the guest of honor section and comfortably enjoy the show. Her plan is cut short as she's pulled away, protesting that it was just getting interesting. Castiel looks on with a pale, shocked expression. The bearded noble leads the children away, offering to take them to a designated children's area, leaving the emperor to protest their sudden departure. Sarah happily waves, calling out grandfather. Bye-bye. The emperor reaches for her in dismay as she explains that her brother is more precious to her. The emperor seethes, silently fuming over the insolent brat's behavior. A sinister smile spreads across the emperor's face. Sarah clenches her fist, vowing to get her revenge for what happened that day. Elsewhere in the gardens, Castiel happily makes friends with another young boy. Two noble women gossip amongst the flowers in a sunny garden. From a distance, Sierra watches the sprawling garden party, taking in the scene. The bearded noble tells Sierra and Castiel they can rest there while he steps away. As Sierra starts to wander off, a worried Castiel asks where she's going and insists on joining her. The festive atmosphere is replaced by a dark, menacing vision of shadowy figures with glowing eyes. Dizzied by the crowd, Castile stumbles against a tree, begging Sierra not to leave him behind. Sierra munches on a snack, thinking how nice the atmosphere is and wishing Rowan could have come too. She stops and looks up, confused by something she sees. Two women gossip about a lady in mourning clothes, identifying her as the Duchess of Remu. With a sad expression, the Duchess endures the whispers of pity about her fall from high society. The gossip continues, revealing that the Duchess's late son wanted to join the Onyx Knights, but ended up in the Royal Knights instead. One of the women whispers that the Duchess would never send her son into the monster den led by the Grim Reaper. Crunch. Crunch. Two maids are startled by the sound of someone eating nearby. The maids apologize for Sierra, who turns away with a huff as onlookers tease, calling her a monster's daughter. A hand suddenly grabs Sierra's shoulder from behind. A terrified Castile has grabbed her, pleading with her not to wander off alone as she yells for her brother. Thump. Castile faints from the stress, slumping into a chair as Sarah rushes to his side, asking if he's okay. Castile looks down in despair, asking Sierra if he's really that pathetic. Sierra gently cups her brother's face in her small hands. A pair of legs and fine boots steps into view, approaching the siblings. A smirking, reddish-haired boy appears, sneering that he's found the monsters. An oppressive aura emanates as Castile and Sarah face their new bullies. A boy with purple hair joins the confrontation, coolly saying, "Long time no see." The purple-haired boy taunts Castile, calling him an eyeball monster, as Sierra realizes the troublemakers have found them. He then insults Castile's clothes, asking if he's a beggar, prompting Sierra to fume silently about her precious outfit from Rowan. In the distance, two maids run across the lawn, shouting for the young masters to stop. A maid scolds a purple-haired noble boy for causing trouble, but he arrogantly boasts that his father is the Grand Duke. The purple-haired boy shoves Castile, taunting him that a Grand Duke outranks a mere duke. After hearing his sister insulted, a furious Castile leaps forward, shouting for them to stop talking about Sierra. Castile stands protectively before Sierra, declaring she's his sister, as the bullies mock him for being crazy. Castile glares with fierce determination, his eyes filled with protective rage. To defend his sister, Castile grabs a nearby glass of water. Click. The water in the glass sloshes as he picks it up. With a look of intense focus, Castile declares that Sarah is not a monster. Splash! Castile hurls the water directly at the two bullies. The empty glass shatters on the ground as the water hits its mark. The drenched purple-haired boy points accusingly, shouting about being soaked. Sierra looks on in disbelief as Castile denies that's what happened. The reddish-haired bully points angrily, calling them arrogant. The reddish-haired boy grabs Sierra's arm, accusing her of trying to run and tattle to her dad. Rip. The boy aggressively tears the sleeve of Sierra's dress. Castile screams in horror, reaching out as he sees Sarah's ruined clothes. The bullies run away, taunting that they'll get there first. Waving mockingly, the two bullies laugh as they flee the scene. Castile stares worriedly at Sierra and the torn fabric of her dress. Taking her hand, Castile gently calls Sarah's name. Sierra decides to show her stupid brother how to properly deal with such bullies. The bullies run crying to their parents near the throne. The purple-haired boy sobs in his mother's arms as she scolds him for his behavior. The boys blame Castile and Sierra for starting the fight, but their mother continues to scold them for misbehaving. Castile and Sierra arrive before the throne, hand in hand, her torn dress on full display. Sierra looks ahead with cold, determined purple eyes. Targa notices the commotion, calling out to Sierra and Castile. The nobles whisper amongst themselves, wondering what happened between the Duke's and Grand Duke's children. Targa smirks, watching the unfolding drama with interest. Targa extends a welcoming hand toward his approaching children. With a determined step, Sierra vows to show her brother how to handle these crazy bastards. Sierra walks purposefully toward the Emperor seated on his throne. The bully's mother watches in utter shock. Targa observes his daughter's bold move with a serious expression. The Emperor looks on in surprise as Sierra reaches out to him. Surrounded by a floral aura, Sierra sweetly calls out, "Grandpa!" A woman covers her mouth, stunned by the young lady's sudden action. The emperor stares down at Sierra, speechless. Beaming, the emperor happily lifts Sierra into his arms. Cradling her, the emperor asks if she missed her grandfather this much, noting she requires attention. Sierra smiles contentedly, snuggling against her grandfather's robe. Sarah beams from the emperor's lap as the bullies and their family look on in stunned silence. The bullies stare in shock, muttering about her insolence. Sierra smirks, thinking that to her, anyone below the emperor is insignificant. She internally gloats about using her ex-boyfriend Belzer to orchestrate her father's grand entrance. Her plan worked perfectly before the countless watching nobles. Sierra smugly thinks that after seeing the emperor favor her, the nobles will know who to side with. Achoo! The emperor sneezes and frets that Sierra has caught a cold from being lightly dressed. Snuggled warmly in the emperor's royal blue cape, Sierra looks up. Sierra gives a heartfelt thank you to her grandpa, who smiles back at her fondly. Two noble women whisper about how much the emperor seems to cherish Sierra. They gossip that he's never cared for other grandchildren like this, wondering if his favor is shifting toward the Grand Duke. TSK, the bully's mother, the woman in the green dress, clenches her fist in anger. She glares furiously, questioning how His Majesty could possibly favor a child like Sierra. The purple-haired bully boy seethes silently, a dark, vengeful aura surrounding him. A scream rings out over a dark, crumbling castle, a vision of ruin. The boy's mother stumbles back in shock and horror. The reddish-haired boy asks his mom what's wrong, but the purple-haired boy just wants to eat. Turning on them with a furious expression, their mother demands to know why. She furiously scolds them for misbehaving and allowing that rat to win the emperor's favor, prompting the boys to apologize and flee. Thump. She screams for them not to run as they escape down the hall. The purple-haired boy complains their mom is dumb for not listening, while his brother insists Castiel started it by splashing them. The purple-haired boy argues Castiel threw the water, not just splashed it, while the other boy seems unsure. The reddish-haired boy pauses, a new thought occurring to him. He recalls the image of Castiel standing defiantly with his sister. The two boys look at each other, the reddish-haired one utterly confused. The reddish-haired boy argues Castiel must have held a cup, but his brother insists Castiel's hands were empty as he walks away. A man with glasses and brown hair appears, smiling, as he asks the boys if they're going out to play. Ugh. Hearing that their mother is angry, the boys groan as their father asks if they are okay. The purple-haired boy frantically denies responsibility, yelling that Castiel started it first. The man with glasses smiles calmly, telling his sons it wasn't their fault. Whew! The boys sigh in relief as their father asks who people would believe, them or Duke Targa's children. The reddish-haired boy agrees as his father puts a hand on his shoulder, saying something more is important. With a chilling smile, the man asks his sons to tell him what they were just talking about. The scene transitions to a bright, elegant room filled with pink roses. Whoa! A baby Sierra in a new frilly pink dress and bonnet gasps in awe. As Castiel notes their grandpa spruced the place up, Sarah dreams of living there, only to be interrupted by her father calling their names. Targa looks down at them, asking if they like it that much, while Sarah worries that he looks upset because she ignored him earlier. Sarah begins to crawl toward her father on the floor. Targa teases Sarah about hugging the emperor so eagerly, as Sarah internally wonders if her father is sulking. Sarah thinks to herself that her grandpa is not just anyone. Presenting a black teddy bear to her father, Sarah thinks that the new toys must look nice to him. With a bright smile, she points and declares that her favorite toy is her dad. Targa is momentarily stunned into silence by his daughter's declaration. He turns to a shocked Castiel and asks for his opinion, and the flustered boy quickly agrees. Sierra internally celebrates, eagerly wondering if her ultimate move was successful, but her hopes fall as she sees her father's stoic expression, thinking he's as cold as ever. Sierra peeks up from the floor, watching her father's reaction. Targa kneels down, extending his hand toward her with a gentle expression. He lightly pokes her on the forehead, startling her. He then turns and gently pokes a blushing Castiel on the cheek, who enthusiastically agrees to the gesture. Sarah waves happily as white feathers float around her. She looks on in confusion as her brother approaches her. A worried Castiel gently takes Sarah's hands in his. He softly calls her name, blushing with a happy, relieved smile. Castiel anxiously asks Sarah if their father's gaze was hateful, needing reassurance that he just stared. Finding his worries odd, Sarah reassures her brother that their dad likes him. She grabs his arm, thinking that more importantly, there's something else she's curious about, her gaze falling upon a glass of water. Elsewhere, a man with brown hair laments their victory celebration turning into a wildfire, as a red-haired woman beside him questions his dramatic complaints. A man with brown hair complains about the royal knights dumping difficult tasks, while a red-haired woman beside him sighs, noting their lack of manpower. A man with long red hair and a blue uniform defiantly asks why he should comply with their orders. A blonde-haired man in a black cape coolly questions if there's any reason to obey the royal knights. The brown-haired man immediately backpedals, enthusiastically agreeing with the blonde man, whom he calls Your Excellency. The brown-haired man vents his frustration, saying the knights dump unwanted work on them and will blame them for any failures. Your Excellency recalls how the knights acted similarly in the Ibril forest, causing the other two men to look on anxiously. Acknowledging that the task would take too long, Your Excellency adds that he knows they want to enjoy the festival, surprising his men. The two subordinates glance at each other, recognizing that this is indeed a problem. With a solemn expression, Your Excellency quietly states that he made a promise to return soon. The brown-haired man Mars beams as his leader tells him this works out well because he has a task for him. Clenching his fist with a confident smirk, Your Excellency informs Mars that there is something he needs him to deliver.
Surrounded by white roses, a little blonde girl in a white dress runs forward, excitedly calling for her brother. Her blonde brother holds a cookie, relieved that his sister is happily enjoying her own. Their peaceful moment is interrupted as a man in a brown uniform scoffs. Ugh, these beggars are here again? A brown-haired boy in a military-style jacket aggressively points, warning the other children not to play with him. The other children shrink back in fear, with one recalling her mother's warning and another worrying about turning into a monster. A boy with purple hair enthusiastically waves his friends on, telling them to hurry up. The blonde girl points back defiantly, and her surprised brother quickly agrees to her request for water. Looking down with a condescending smile, the brown-haired boy taunts them for whining like baby ghosts. Suddenly, his taunt is cut short as a small, determined hand grabs his own. He stares down in stunned silence, his mouth agape as he stammers, "Yee! You!" The little blonde girl points confidently, challenging him by asking, "What else?" With a sharp crack, the intricate toy car in the bully's hand begins to fracture. The toy explodes into dozens of pieces, leaving the brown-haired boy in complete shock. The shattered fragments of the porcelain car rain down around his feet. Staring down at the wreckage, he wonders in confusion why the toy suddenly broke. He gasps as his eyes widen in dawning horror. He recalls another time when toys were mysteriously broken, thinking this can't be happening again. The little blonde girl stands proudly over the broken pieces, beaming as she exclaims, "Yes!" Enraged by her defiance, the brown-haired boy lunges, screaming that he won't let the insolent brat get away with it. As he rushes toward the little girl, a hand suddenly appears as someone shouts for him to stop. The blonde boy steps protectively in front of his sister, his eyes glowing as water magic swirls around his hands, yelling, "Stay away from my sister!" The bully is hit with a blast of water, sputtering in confusion. What the hell is that? As a shimmering aquatic aura surrounds her, the little girl realizes with a smile that her brother's power is real. She recalls her many failed attempts to trigger his ability, which never manifested, leaving her to wonder if he felt anything. She now understands that she wasn't seeing things. The key to unlocking her brother's power is anger. In another instance, her brother angrily holds a cup and defends his sister, yelling, "Don't you dare yell at our Sierra!" The purple-haired boy runs up to his friend, asking, "Thebe, what's going on? Why did you scream?" A swirling vortex of water magic separates the blonde siblings from the two stunned bullies, Thebe and his friend. As her brother stands protectively before her, Sierra internally admits she orchestrated the confrontation to provoke his rare anger. Thebe and his friends stare in terror at the display of power, with the purple-haired boy stammering that it's like dark magic. The purple-haired boy furiously declares that they are both done for, deciding to target the little ghost first. With a surge of power, the blonde boy glares at them, warning fiercely, "Stay back!" He unleashes another wave of water magic, yelling, "I said stay back!" as the two bullies shield themselves. As the bullies scream, he immediately turns to Sira, his anger replaced by concern as he asks if she's hurt. Sira happily reassures him she's fine and praises his amazing power, while the two drenched bullies tremble behind them. As Thebe complains about being soaked, a calm, older boy in a green coat with dark blue hair suddenly appears. The newcomer surveys the scene of his drenched and defeated younger brother, demanding to know what's going on. As a distraught Thebe tries to explain about the brats in the water, the older boy calmly interrupts, "I already know, Thebe." Thebe looks up at his older brother in total confusion, able to manage only a faint, "Huh?" The older boy places a reassuring hand on Thebe's shoulder. He then smiles gently and reveals, "It's me." An end-of-season note from the artist announces a break and promises an exciting return in June. With a sinister smile and a dark aura, the older brother declares, "The one who sprayed water on you was me." He casually explains to Thebe that he thought they were fighting and was simply trying to break it up. To prove his point, shimmering blue water begins to swirl and coalesce in the palm of his hand. He effortlessly forms the water into a full glass and presents it, asking, "There. Do you believe me now?" Thebe and his friend are instantly relieved, exclaiming, "Whoa, I knew it! So it was you, brother!" Thebe admits he was terrified because he thought the monster, the blonde boy, had done it. He explains their shock was because they didn't realize it was his brother's power, not some unknown threat. Thebe's older brother stares ahead with a cold, sinister smile, remaining utterly silent. As his older brother leads the way, the purple-haired boy tells a sulking Thebe that they should go because he's hungry. Thebe childishly sticks his tongue out as he leaves. The blonde boy, Castiel, watches them go, his fists clenched in alarm. His sister, Sarah, rushes to his side, excitedly reassuring him that he's truly amazing. Insisting his power is real, Sarah wonders how to explain it as they both stand before the legs of a tall man. Castiel and Sira look up in awe at the person standing before them. A smiling brown-haired boy cheerfully confirms that Castiel was indeed the one who used the power. He tells a surprised Castiel that he isn't just trying to be nice, he's simply speaking the truth. The brown-haired boy beams, radiating a friendly and cheerful energy. Glancing down at the little girl, he asks Castiel if she is his younger sibling. Castiel formally introduces himself and Sarah, and the brown-haired boy happily returns the pleasure of meeting them. Sira is immediately impressed by the polite and handsome boy, thinking he'd be a great friend for her brother, and is then shocked to realize he's the second Duke of Remu. She recalls a noble woman in mourning and realizes that this boy must be her grandson. The boy waves goodbye, explaining his grandmother is waiting, and Castiel wishes him well. Castiel turns to his sister with a smile, asking if it's time to head back to the palace for her nap. Instead of answering, Sarah reaches out and touches the new boy's hand just as he turns to leave. Thinking her brother is silly, she resolves to show him the proper way to make powerful friends. Her strategy is simple. When meeting someone with power, you must grab their hand first without hesitation. She beams with pure, unadulterated joy at her successful maneuver. Sira happily clutches the fabric of the boy's clothes. The scene shifts to a beautiful rose archway as someone begins to laugh. An older man with a gray beard fondly recalls how Sira came to him to be held, even with her father standing right there. Speaking to two other men, he adds that he couldn't possibly have said no to her. An aide watches a chibi version of a white-haired boy ignore a dark-haired man, wondering why His Majesty is picking another fight with the Duke. The king, a man with a brown beard, is startled as his aide asks why he was summoned. A blonde-haired man in a blue uniform coolly asks the king if he's offended, questioning if he truly thought his actions would go unnoticed. The king smirks back, retorting that Sira came to him first and asking if the blonde man understands the implications. With a calm smile, the blonde man tells His Majesty he can interpret it however he likes, enraging the king. The king furiously shouts that he is simply stating the truth. Sira ran to him, and nothing more. The blonde man calmly suggests it's better if His Majesty doesn't know the full story, leaving the king stunned. With a knowing look, the blonde man thinks to himself that the one Sira loves most is the memory of a baby Sira happily pointing at someone. In a cute chibi standoff, the shocked king confronts the calm, blonde-haired man. The king challenges him to get everything out in the open, but the blonde man warns that he will regret it. The blonde man lowers his head, his expression resolved and unwavering. The king, flustered, demands to know why the blonde man suddenly stopped talking. A brief, shining memory shows Sierra happily holding the hand of the brown-haired boy she just met. As the king and the blonde man face off, the king asks, with dawning realization, if the person Sierra loves is a boy. Back in the garden, Castile has a moment of shocked clarity, realizing the truth in the king's words. The new boy, Arsène, smiles kindly and says he doesn't have any siblings, a fact Sarah mentally files away as likable smile confirmed. Sierra, holding her brother's hand, internally praises her own excellent judgment in picking a friend for him. Arsène gives Sierra a warm, gentle smile, causing her to blush. Castile happily waves, bidding farewell to his new friend. Bye, Arsène. Waving energetically, Castile internally celebrates how happy he is to have made a new friend and is glad he held on to Arsène. The blonde-haired man, presumably their father, observes them from a distance, noting how happy they seem. Sarah jumps in surprise at her father's sudden appearance, complaining that he startled her. Her father gently chides her for running around so much when she has only just started walking properly again. The atmosphere grows tense as the father and the king glare at each other, with the king noting the complete change in his rival's eyes. Sarah looks up at her father's tense expression, completely bewildered. A frustrated Chibi Sierra shouts that she doesn't understand what her father and the king are talking about. In a flashback, a younger Castile and Arsène play in a field, with Castile eagerly suggesting they go check something out. A sleepy younger Sierra lets out a big yawn. Sitting on a bench, the tired little girl shakes her head, trying to stay awake. Arsène tells Castile he didn't realize how busy his friend would be playing every day. An unseen woman recognizes Sierra, identifying her as the famous granddaughter of His Majesty. A red-haired woman in mourning attire approaches with a parasol, asking Sierra why she is all alone. The woman in black gives Sierra a knowing smile. She laughs, guessing Sierra's brother went to play without her, as Castile and Arsène are seen running happily in the distance. The woman watches the boys with a gentle, wistful expression. Looking at a duck on the water, she muses that men are just boys, and she'll never understand them. In a somber memory, she recalls a cloaked figure in his last request to become a knight, regretting that she never tried to understand him. Smiling kindly, she apologizes to Sarah for speaking so frankly to a child. She turns to a maid and gives instructions for the young lady to be escorted safely back to the palace. She tells the surprised blonde maid that they can't continue dampening the Empire's celebrations with their mourning clothes. As the maid stammers, Sierra asks from the bench if they are both supposed to stop mourning. The red-haired woman's expression becomes resolute, affirming she means right this very moment. The woman asks Sierra to keep their talk a secret, and the little girl enthusiastically agrees. HMPH back with her brother. A pouting Sierra glares at him for leaving her alone, while a panicked Castile quickly apologizes. Castile asks Sierra what she and Arsène's grandmother were talking about, but she just stares thoughtfully into the distance. Shh. Sierra puts a finger to her lips, signaling for her brother to be quiet. She then beams, clearly enjoying her little secret. In a quiet room, a woman with long dark hair hums as she snips at something in a teacup. Surrounded by flowers, the dark-haired woman smiles and congratulates someone named Lucas for doing very well. Sitting across from a dark blue-haired boy, she explains that rumors of his awakened water power have conveniently spread, just as nobles gather for a victory celebration. She notes his power is far more impressive than the mere droplets Thebe and Harmel can conjure, asking when he trains so hard. Hearing his power can shoot upward, she slams her cup down, deciding they must summon Cameline immediately for formal recognition. The boy, Lucas, looks up with a heavy expression, addressing his mother and pleading for her to stop. From across the room, Lucas repeats his request for his mother to cease her planning. With a slight smile, Lucas says he'd prefer to train quietly and will only reveal his power once it's too strong for anyone to interfere. His mother readily agrees, praising his foresight and concluding that sending him to study abroad was a worthy investment. Lucas lowers his head with a cold smile, thinking to himself that his mother is definitely busy with her own agenda. As his mother reaches toward him, he calmly asks her what greater strength he could possibly have. His mother laughs nervously and brings up a woman who recently lost her son, her own expression filled with grief. Lucas smiles warmly, confidently stating that because of her own loss, he is sure she will take good care of the other woman's son. Clasping her hands, his mother makes a vow, telling Lucas to trust her to make it happen. With a wide, determined smile, she says she will see him tomorrow and quickly departs. Lucas watches her leave with cold, calculating eyes. As a dark shadow emanates from him, he cynically admits that while she is his mother, he has to admire her confidence. A red-haired maid suddenly appears from the shadows, addressing him as Lord Lucas. The maid presents 2 glowing red gems, confirming she has retrieved what he asked for. Lucas calmly takes one of the crimson gems from her. Holding the sparkling gem, he questions if its effect is guaranteed. He inspects the artifact closely, asking if there are any exceptions to its power. The maid explains it works by suppressing opposing powers, though very strong water magic might be difficult to contain. As another maid suggests a less risky method, mentioning the bloodshed caused by Lady Camellia, the red-haired maid sharply cuts her off. She reassures Lucas that the only way to break the artifact's power is with a stronger flame, a power that doesn't exist in the palace. A narration explains that the Empire is ruled by water, and the fire-wielding cursed bloodline vanished over a century ago. The maid asks about a place a certain stammerer frequents, and Lucas confirms her suspicions. Holding the gem, Lucas notes that the festival will end in 2 days, setting a deadline for his mysterious plan. Clutching the glowing red gem, Lucas smirks, disappointed that the festival is already ending, just as his plans are beginning. A blonde noblewoman in a grand hall furiously scolds a maid for failing to bring someone to her, demanding to know why she, the Grand Duchess, is being ignored. Grabbing the maid's uniform, the enraged Grand Duchess demands to know why the person is even there if she won't meet with her. The maid stammers that she saw the person speaking with Lady Burke, sending the Grand Duchess into a state of shocked fury. Thinking of a giggling baby Sira, the Grand Duchess internally fumes, calling her an annoying little brat. Learning that Duchess Remu plans to leave in 2 days, the Grand Duchess clenches her fist, vowing to win the Duchess's favor before she departs. She resolves to use any means necessary, including flattery and gifts, to ensure Duchess Remu chooses her side. The Grand Duchess turns to her blonde maid, intensely asking if she has prepared the message she was instructed to deliver to her brother. A figure in a blue hooded cloak hums a tune while walking. The figure is revealed to be Sira, who hums happily as she looks back over her shoulder. Sira dances beside her brother Castiel, proudly explaining that she is copying the confident demeanor of Duchess Remu. A vision of Duchess Remu illustrates her noble grace, with narration describing her fearless and powerful aura, a true presence among nobility. As the children walk, a large boot steps in front of them, and an unseen man demands to know what they are doing. Their blonde-haired father appears with a stern look, questioning if they are sick or hurt. A deeply annoyed Chibi Sarah inwardly curses her idiot dad for his cluelessness. Sierra turns away in a huff as Castiel translates her mood, telling their father he's too loud and that she'd like some quiet. Her father leans closer, asking if there's anything she needs. Sarah internally laments that her father has neglected her, recalling a time she watched from afar as he stood with another woman. A mischievous glint appears in Sierra's eyes as she decides this is the perfect opportunity to train her neglectful father. Her thought is emphasized again, confirming her intent to use this moment to teach him a lesson. Sierra approaches her father and Castiel, ready to put her plan into action. Looking up at her father with a serious expression, she decides to test his reaction first. With Castiel as her mouthpiece, Sierra declares she doesn't care for material things and only wants an apology, but her father cleverly counters by offering her a tiara instead. A cute standoff ensues. As a stubborn-looking chibi, Sierra faces her smirking chibi father. Her father smiles slyly, reminding her that she just claimed she didn't want anything. A flustered Sarah admits to herself that his offer of a tiara nearly made her abandon her principles. 2 uniformed men, one with dark hair and one with red hair, arrive at the door, with the dark-haired one eagerly announcing he's been waiting for this moment. One of the men presents a pink, ornate box to Sierra, whose eyes widen in amazement. He opens the box to reveal a magnificent, sparkling tiara, asking for her opinion. Sierra is utterly captivated by the beautiful tiara, whispering in awe. In a tender-framed memory, her father gently places the new tiara upon her head. Sierra beams with pure joy, proudly modeling her beautiful new crown. The red-haired aide asks his silent master why he kept so many jewels buried and unused for so long. The father sternly tells his red-haired aide to be mindful of his words in front of the child. Now wearing the tiara, Sierra curiously asks about the buried jewels, while the aide worries about their secret being exposed. The dark-haired aide tries to ease the tension, but the father coldly states he dislikes things buried beneath a monster's grave. The red-haired aide reveals his concern stems from overhearing maids named Lady Thebe and Lady Harmel constantly criticizing Sierra. Her father smirks, finally understanding the source of his subordinate's anxiety. He turns his attention back to Sierra with a confident and reassuring expression. A close-up captures his knowing and confident smile. He assures his aide that Sierra is strong and won't be defeated by mere gossip, as Sierra listens with newfound understanding. Wow! The next day, a massive, brilliant coliseum is bathed in a pillar of heavenly light. Two small boys in matching sailor outfits run excitedly, with the younger one shouting for his big brother to wait. The Grand Duchess stands elegantly in a stylish blue and white dress, framed by white roses. Yahoo! The Grand Duchess shouts in frustration as the two boys, whom she calls rascals, hastily run past her in the crowd. She approaches a man with a prominent mustache, addressing him as dear. Lucas's mother, followed by two children, confidently declares that their simple attire gives them an advantage to impress the nobles and outshine everyone else. The Grand Duchess conceals a determined smile behind her lace fan, ready for the day's events. A soft glowing memory shows two children sharing a close, tender moment. A beautiful montage shows the blonde father holding a radiant Sarah in a pink dress and a new, more elaborate tiara, with Castile happily holding his hand. In a crowd of nobles, two women gasp in amazement at Sarah's tiara, exclaiming over its pink diamonds and massive carrot size. Whispers spread through the crowd as nobles speculate on how the Duke, whose estate is rumored to be in ruins, could afford such a jewel. Held in her father's arms, Sarah internally celebrates, thrilled that everyone is finally speaking well of her dad. Hiding behind a fan, a blonde noblewoman recalls how the Duke doted on Sarah, a kindness her own husband never showed her. The gossiping women continue, marveling at the Duke of Berk's unexpectedly gentle side as they watch him with his daughter. A man with a prominent mustache and blue-gray hair suddenly appears, his face a mask of fury. He furiously scolds the women for their vulgar talk, causing them to bow and beg for his forgiveness. With cold red eyes, Sierra's father looks down with an imposing and severe expression. His voice cuts through the air as he icily tells the man not to be rude and to offer a proper greeting. The confrontation is set as the Duke and his children face the mustached man and a blonde woman, with his demand for a greeting hanging between them. The two boys in sailor outfits run past their exasperated mother, the Grand Duchess, urging their parents to hurry. The younger boy suddenly stops, his eyes wide with surprise, as he lets out a confused, "Huh?" In a sparkling, ornate frame, Sierra looks absolutely adorable while being held by her father. The mustached man furiously reprimands his sons, ordering them to be quiet and remember where they are. He is then confronted by another man who criticizes him for not teaching his children basic manners and being insolent himself. Peeking from behind her father, Sierra listens as he coldly asks the man what he means by his accusation. The man points out that his children, Thebe and Harmel, are older than the Duke's, to which the Duke replies with a dismissive "and" sigh. The mustached man lectures the Duke on imperial hierarchy, insisting that younger children must show respect to their elders. A flicker of an amused, almost dangerous smirk crosses the Duke's face. The mustached man is aghast that the Duke is laughing at him, as the Duke calmly calls to Castile and Sarah. Sarah and Castile look up at their father, and Castile timidly confirms he is listening. With a chilling look, the Duke instructs his children to respond in kind to anyone who treats them like bugs or tools. He continues, advising them to crush their enemies so thoroughly they will never dare to bother them again, shocking the mustached noble. Turning his back on the stunned man and his children, the Duke announces it's time to leave as the javelin event is ending. A fist clenches tightly, trembling with suppressed rage. The scene shifts to the finale of the Victory Festival, the javelin event, symbolized by a spear with a flowing red banner. In a massive stadium, the rules are explained. Contestants must throw a javelin through 9 rings to win. The narration reveals a legendary 10th ring held by a statue of the water goddess, a target no knight has ever reached. Sarah looks on, listening as a nearby woman confirms the incredible difficulty of the event. With a cute yawn, Sarah realizes this legendary challenge is the source of the royal knight's prestigious reputation. From a distance, the blonde Grand Duchess watches the Duke's family with a stern expression, as a sleepy Sarah dozes in her father's arms. The Grand Duchess bites her lip, internally fuming that this situation is absurd. Her thoughts turn to Sarah's magnificent tiara as she wonders where they could have possibly acquired such a treasure. Nearby ladies gossip that the stunning piece of jewelry might even attract the attention of the powerful Duchess from Mu. The Grand Duchess grips her fan tightly, convinced the tiara is a blatant attempt to curry favor with the Duchess. The crowd's attention is captured by a sudden announcement heralding the arrival of His Majesty, the Emperor. A knight in shining armor commands the entire stadium to rise for the Emperor. An elderly man with white hair and a beard makes a grand entrance, his royal presence commanding the space. Sarah, wearing her sparkling tiara, stands quietly before her father. The Emperor's stern face breaks into a wide smile as he joyfully greets our Sira and sweeps her into a hug, to which she happily cries, "Grandpa." Hee. Sira giggles with pure delight, surrounded by a flourish of happy yellow flowers as her grandfather embraces her. Holding Sira aloft, the Emperor playfully scolds her for hiding such a beautiful tiara and not wearing it sooner. The mustached noble, Erno, leans in and quietly suggests to the Emperor that they should investigate the origin of the jewels. Erno smirks derisively, questioning how Targa, the Duke, could possibly afford such a lavish gift. The Emperor looks thoughtfully toward the Duke, Targa, who stands silently under the scrutiny. A man with dark blue hair steps forward, agreeing with Erno and addressing the Emperor as father. The Emperor rebuffs the accusation, defending Targa's right to buy his daughter a gift and reminding them he started his dukedom with nothing. Narration explains Targa refused all assets, accepting only a rundown castle and insufficient funds, choosing hardship over imperial wealth. Erno presses his case, arguing that Targa left because he was sick of the palace, making his sudden display of wealth highly suspicious. A man with brownish gold hair voices a dangerous suggestion, and an ominous thought hangs in the air. Is Targa being accused of colluding with the enemy? A voice furiously demands Targa reveal the origin of the jewels, accusing him of changing his story now that he's cornered. The scene shifts to a dark, misty forest as Targa begins his explanation, naming Kirk's Highland and Rodmill Forest. He continues, listing the frozen ravine of Normans and reminding his accusers they dumped every beast on him, causing the mustache man Erno to stammer in confusion. A wicked smirk crosses Targa's face as he prepares to reveal his secret. With a chilling expression and his arms crossed, Targa explains that the monsters he fought were filled with jewels in their stomachs. A vivid flashback shows a beast being sliced open, its innards spilling out a treasure trove of magnificent, sparkling jewels. Targa stares down his accusers with a terrifyingly confident smile, his red eyes gleaming with menace. What? The mustached noble, Erno, recoils in absolute shock and disbelief at the revelation. Targa explains that beasts consume pure energy crystals, which become part of their bodies, a fact Erno calls absurd, until Targa mentions finding a beast poised to attack Erno's own estate. The surrounding nobles gasp as a man asks in disbelief if there are really gemstones inside the beasts. The man continues, realizing that for defeating such savage beasts, Duke Burke should be rewarded, not questioned. Erno retorts that Targa was underhanded for not reporting it, while the dark blue-haired man urges his father, the Emperor, to demand the remaining jewels be turned over. The dark blue-haired man points aggressively, insisting the gems are located in a war zone and thus belong to everyone who fought. The red-haired aide grits her teeth at the man's audacity, but Targa silences her with a single word: enough. Targa grabs the dark blue-haired man by his collar, coldly stating that the nearest location to find more jewels is right here. He challenges his opponents, coolly inviting them to take the jewels if they possess the skill to do so. With a confident smirk, Targa dismisses their claim, asking what does it matter who found them first. He delivers a chilling warning that the moment they step into that forest, half of them will die, shocking a nearby blonde knight. Targa clarifies that their inexperience against the beast's poison, miasma, and rot means they won't survive the hunt. Erno takes a frightened step back as the weight of Targa's threat sinks in. With his red cape billowing, Targa makes a stunning announcement. The Onyx Knights will no longer participate in beast extermination. His loyal red-haired and dark-haired aides bow deeply, affirming their obedience to his command. The dark blue-haired man erupts in fury, demanding to know what Targa is saying. He accuses Targa of using the people's lives as leverage and betraying his knightly duty. The Emperor finally intervenes, stepping between his son and Targa to declare an end to the confrontation. His son protests that Targa is being arrogant, but the Emperor wisely questions the need for such conflict on a celebratory day. The scene transitions with the sound of a triumphant golden trumpet against a brilliant blue sky. A fanfare sounds as the camera reveals a festive marching band. The view expands to show the massive, cheering crowd filling the Colosseum for the main event. An ornate box is presented, containing the medal to be awarded to the greatest knight in the Corona Empire. As Targa prepares his javelin, Erno wishes him luck in the upcoming war, while the rules for victory are explained. The entire stadium erupts in a massive cheer. The mood softens as the Emperor holds Sira on his lap, smiling as she happily eats a cookie. The Emperor chuckles, asking the oblivious Sira if she understands what he's just done for her sake. He takes a bite of the cookie Sira offered him, his eyes closing in enjoyment. A delighted Chibi Emperor declares the cookie tastes better because it's from Sira, who notes how much he's enjoying himself. Watching them, Targa's expression becomes heavy with a deep, unspoken sorrow. Suddenly, Erno leaps to his feet, cheering in amazement as a contestant passes through 9 rings. Sira gasps, nervously biting her glove as she wonders how anyone could be so skilled. Castiel rushes to her side, pointing to the arena and urging her to look. A lone figure stands on the field before a brilliant sphere of light, ready for the final challenge. On a blood-red background, narration describes this figure as a feared monster who swept the continent, a veritable Grim Reaper. With fierce determination, Sarah silently cheers him on, hoping he will show them all his true power. Her heartfelt wish echoes across a dark and chaotic background. An announcer introduces the final contestant, His Grace, the Duke of Berk, as Targa stands alone on the field, javelin in hand. Sira looks on with worry etched on her face, her small voice whispering, "Dad!" The Grand Duchess smirks behind her fan, certain that Targa is about to be humiliated in front of everyone. Her son confidently declares there's no way Targa can match his father, claiming the outcome is obvious. Sira clenches her fists, admitting they might be right, but resolving that her dad must make it through at least 9 rings. The ultimate challenge is revealed, a glowing statue of the water goddess, holding the legendary 10th ring, the only true path to victory. A finger gently touches an old photograph of the goddess statue, a halo of light glowing on its surface. A woman tells a young Sira that no one has ever passed through the 10th ring, as it requires a divine power beyond human reach. Sira's eyes widen as she learns the legend. The goddess will grant the wish of anyone who accomplishes the feat. In the present, Sira frantically tells her father to stop looking at them and focus on the target ahead. Targa turns his gaze forward, his expression resolute, as he prepares to throw. With a powerful leap, Targa launches the javelin, his eyes blazing with fierce determination. The Grand Duchess, her son, and the mustached noble Erno watch in stunned silence. Sira clasps her hands together, her face filled with hope and anxiety. The javelin flies true, perfectly aimed at the legendary 10th ring held by the goddess statue. With a flash of divine light, the javelin passes cleanly through the final ring, achieving the impossible. A noblewoman gasps in shock as an announcement confirms the Duke of Berk has passed every single round. Tears well up in Sira's eyes as she watches her father's incredible achievement. The Emperor, holding Sira, places a finger to his lips, signaling for her to watch what happens next. From the Emperor's perspective, his gloved hand points toward the now glowing goddess statue. The entire statue of the water goddess begins to radiate a brilliant, divine light. A wave of energy pulses from the ring in the statue's hand, shimmering with power. Ladies in the crowd gasp, exclaiming that the goddess's ring is glowing, a sight they have never seen before. Nearby nobles, including the man with the goatee, stare in disbelief, wondering what is happening. Targa sinks to his knees on the field, bathed in the ethereal light emanating from the statue. With his head bowed, Targa prays to the goddess, asking for peace for the souls of the fallen. The crowd murmurs in awe, realizing he is the first to pass the goddess's ring and used his wish to pray for his fallen knights. The Grand Duchess grits her teeth in fury. Overwhelmed with pride and emotion, Sira joyfully calls out to her dad. The camera lens flares, symbolizing a moment of pure triumph and glory. Sira proudly declares that her dad is the tournament's winner as he raises a triumphant fist to the cheering crowd. The Grand Duchess's son screams in outrage, questioning how his dad could have lost. He continues his tantrum, refusing to believe his father, a Grand Duke, could lose to a mere duke, while Sira looks on with disdain. Ha! Sira slumps over, completely drained now that the intense match is over. Her father's voice gently asks why she's struggling to stay awake, telling her to just sleep. A smiling Targa approaches his children, his figure surrounded by a gentle, flowery aura. He calls out Sira, and she looks up, happily shouting, "Daddy!" Targa places the ornate winner's medal around his daughter's neck. Sierra looks down at the shining medal in her hands with wide, curious eyes. Castiel excitedly explains that it's a laurel medal, a symbol that means she is the best knight. Sierra, now on the Emperor's lap, presents the medal back to her father, insisting that she really loves it. The Emperor chides Targa, asking if he's just going to stand there and watch his daughter. Targa looks down at his family, his expression somber and thoughtful. Deciding to give them a moment alone, Sierra grabs Castiel's hand to leave, but he resists. Wah. Castiel starts crying that he wants a medal too, as Sierra wonders why he's still upset. As the children walk off, the red-haired Duchess Remu watches them with a fond, knowing smile. The Grand Duchess spots her and calls out, "Duchess Remu!" She rushes over, eagerly asking the Duchess if she enjoyed the match. The Duchess coolly turns away, but the Grand Duchess stops her, pleading for her to take a moment to talk. Duchess Remu agrees to a brief moment, assuring the Grand Duchess it will be worthwhile. A woman with long dark hair arrives, sighing with a weary but pleasant smile. The dark-haired woman approaches, apologizing to Duchess Remu for the chaotic event. Her comment about the noisy event enrages the Grand Duchess, who furiously asks what she just said. Hehe. Duchess Remu chuckles from behind her fan, observing that the two of them seem to have more to discuss. As Duchess Remu begins to take her leave, the Grand Duchess stops her again, insisting she has something to show her. Click. The Grand Duchess opens a small velvet box, revealing a magnificent jeweled ring inside. Duchess Remu looks down at the gift with a cool, appraising gaze, questioning why she's being offered such a rare gem. A blonde-haired woman in a blue dress politely tells Duchess Remu she doesn't think she's the right person to receive such a gift. Duchess Remu apologizes, stating that nothing would please her right now, while the blonde woman looks on with a pained expression. The dark-haired woman observes that a jewel couldn't possibly fill the depth of the Duchess's insight. The dark-haired woman then extends a friendly invitation for the Duchess to visit her palace and browse her collection at her leisure. Shaking her head gently, Duchess Remu declines, asking Lady Melissa not to take it the wrong way. Duchess Remu calmly explains that gold and jewels mean nothing to her, as they cannot help her obtain what she truly desires. Turning to Sierra, the Duchess says she is glad she got to say goodbye to the little princess. The grandmother leans down, apologizing to Sierra for the embarrassing behavior of their family, while Sierra wonders why her grandmother is still so shy around her. The grandmother then lovingly compliments Sierra, telling her that the tiara suits her perfectly. She reminds Sierra to take good care of the precious item, just as a maid announces that the Duchess's carriage has arrived. Sierra's thought, "Grandma," echoes with affection, catching the Duchess's attention. Looking up with determination, Sierra offers her precious tiara to her grandmother, exclaiming, "Take this." The touching moment is captured in a beautiful, ornate frame, showing little Sierra offering the tiara to her grandmother. Holding the tiara, the grandmother looks down in astonishment, asking Sierra why she would give this to her. A ribbon flutters, as a voice urges the Duchess to please wait. Sierra beams with pure joy, proudly presenting the golden laurel medal her father won. The grandmother is visibly stunned and moved by the unexpected, heartfelt gesture. She holds the heavy medal in her hand, her expression softening as she gazes at it. The Duchess fondly recalls that her own child used to speak with the same earnest habit. A memory flashes of a man, likely her son, with his hand over his heart, radiating a similar sincere light. Sierra watches her, smiling with pure, unconditional love. The grandmother gently places the winner's medal around her own neck. The grandmother admits she's never received such a gift and is unsure how to express her gratitude, leaving the other two women speechless. From above, the blonde woman's voice reveals her true feelings. She is truly disappointed. She laments that she never expected such a thing from Duchess Remu, whom she believed had unparalleled judgment, regardless of a child's pitiful circumstances. Duchess Remu smirks faintly behind her veil, having heard every word. Standing tall with the medal now around her neck, she places a hand over her heart, her decision made. "What?" The blonde woman shouts in disbelief, demanding to know what the Duchess is saying. As she begins to walk away, the Duchess states that there are those more pitiable than a mother who has lost her son. She continues, explaining that in meeting nearly every noble in the empire, she has seen many things. She then places a gentle hand on Sierra's head, declaring that the most pitiable person she has met is the young lady standing right there. Looking back at the stunned women, the Duchess adds a final, cryptic warning that the festival is not yet over. A hand gently rests on Sierra's shoulder, and she looks up with wide, curious eyes. The Duchess smiles warmly, holding the tiara that Sierra had offered her. As the man's hand pats her head, Sierra quietly insists that she is not pitiful at all. The scene transitions to the Grand Meyer Palace the following day. Erno slams his hand on a table, exclaiming to his brother that the situation is serious. In a wide view of the meeting room, Erno angrily asserts that Targa clearly planned the entire spectacle from the very beginning. He scoffs, dismissing Targa's victory as trickery and questioning how a lowly brat could possibly pass through all the rings. The dark blue-haired man coolly replies that's why he told their father to pass them all, prompting Erno to yell back, "If it's so easy, then why didn't you enter the competition, brother?" A blonde-haired woman at the table reaches out to calm Erno down. She agrees with Erno's sentiment, admitting she was left speechless when Targa placed the medal on Sierra. She theorizes that a child couldn't have come up with such a ploy, suspecting the Duke coached them in a terrifying and disgraceful scheme. Thump! Erno hits the table again, declaring they must come up with a solution to this problem. He insists they must eliminate Targa before the situation spirals further, to which the dark blue-haired man calmly agrees. The dark blue-haired man points out the difficulty, questioning how they can corner Targa when he is currently being celebrated as a war hero. Erno thinks for a moment, then suggests they could use Targa's previous request for spoils of war against him. Tisk. The blue-haired man dismisses the idea, warning that while they could accuse Targa of hoarding rewards, a full investigation would expose their own misdeeds. Erno presses his brother for better ideas, but the blue-haired man simply advises him to calm down and take things one step at a time. Sighing, he admits they must be prudent, as Targa's reputation is so clean that there isn't a single speck of dust to find on him. The dark blue-haired man, now wearing glasses and a vest, smiles faintly while examining a pink ribbon as a dark-haired woman watches him from across the room. At a sparsely populated grand dining table, someone calls out, "Lucas?" while another voice begins to ask a question. A young man with dark blue hair smiles and apologizes, explaining he was absorbed in a project he was making. Surrounded by a radiant purple aura, the blue-haired young man thinks with a determined smile that he's making Sierra's birthday present. As the family sits around the large table, the young man's thoughts confirm his intention. He's making a birthday present for Sierra. A man in a blue uniform looks up in surprise, asking if he means Sierra, the Duke's daughter. The blue-haired young man explains that Sierra must soon prove her power, sympathizing with the difficult procedures she must endure. He presents a beautifully wrapped gift box with a pink ribbon, wanting to celebrate the safe completion of her trial. The man in the blue uniform grabs a shocked Erno by the collar, nervously confirming that Sierra is indeed the Duke's daughter. The two men exchange a tense, silent glance. A veiled woman with dark green hair looks on with concern as an unseen person clears their throat, agreeing that proof is necessary. The veiled woman bites her lip, her expression filled with anguish and fear. Her mind races in panic as she desperately wonders what she should do. The scene shifts to an enormous mansion as a voice shouts in disbelief, asking if someone was pecked by a bird. A dark-haired young man with a scratch on his cheek smiles charmingly and confirms that, yes, he was. He recounts how a bird flew over and pecked him as he was getting out of his carriage, while Castiel asks what kind of bird it was. Showing a scratch on his arm, he describes the bird as pitch black, with surprisingly long wings. As he recalls its sharp beak, Sierra shudders in terror, remembering the menacing bird and thinking, "That damn Belzer." Castiel mentions seeing a similar bird at their house, but before he can say more, Sierra clamps a hand over his mouth with a shriek. "Wah!" Castiel cries out, looking at his scratched hand while Sierra tells him to worry about his own injury first. The dark-haired young man smiles fondly, observing how well the two siblings seem to get along. He continues to watch them, commenting that unlike most siblings he knows, they are always together. He gently pats Sierra's head, telling Castiel that he's learned how cute babies can be thanks to him. He suddenly stops, pulling his hand back with an "Ah!" He hesitates for a moment, unsure how to proceed, as the two children look up at him. He joyfully pats her head again as Sierra proudly declares that after dealing with Belzer, a little scratch is nothing. From inside, two men watch the children playing by the window, one of them pondering what happens once they leave. The two men, Targa and the Emperor, glare furiously, seething at the audacity of the little brat and tiny thing. The scene focuses on the dark-haired boy with glasses, identified as the young lord of House Remew, soon to inherit his title. The Emperor looks on thoughtfully, remarking to Targa that knowing this information is good. Targa turns with a sharp gaze, clarifying that it's good because of his own children. He explains the importance of House Remu's social standing and how their children's friendship will benefit Castiel and Sierra's future. The Emperor crosses his arms and concedes that having a good friend is never a bad thing for his grandchildren. Targa looks on with a faint, knowing smile and a glint of determination in his red eyes. Targa makes a face as the Emperor laughs heartily beside him. The Emperor suggests that Targa could take on a role in something like foreign affairs or national defense. Thump. Targa's hand slams down on a table as he begins to speak. With his back turned, Targa looks conflicted, while the Emperor urges him to consider the offer. An aide rushes into the room, apologizing to the Emperor for the sudden interruption. The aide approaches the two men, preparing to deliver an urgent message. Targa's eyes narrow, as the aide clarifies that the message is not for the Emperor but for the Duke. The aide announces that a formal request has been received from the Council of Elders to verify Lady Sierra's power. The scene transitions to a magnificent, towering castle basking in golden light. Targa angrily clutches a crest on his uniform, calling the council members insolent fools. Seated on his throne and radiating fury, the Emperor roars, demanding to know how they dare question whose granddaughter she is. Recalling an image of Sierra's mother holding her as a baby, Targa realizes the council used his victory to force the issue. Targa understands the council's true goal: to use an illegitimate child to undermine the Emperor's authority. Targa gazes somberly at the memory of his late wife and their infant daughter. In the memory, baby Sierra's tiny hand clutches his shirt as if to reassure him not to worry. With intense determination in her wide purple eyes, Sarah passionately declares that she really is his daughter.